Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back for another episode of The Podcast, a cannabis podcast for budding enthusiasts. As always, you're joined by your boy, Heavy Days, here from the Upside Down Library. And we want to give a massive shout out to all of our incredible sponsors who help ensure the show continues to happen. Seeds Here Now, your number one seed bank in the industry, all the hottest breeders, the latest drops, everything you can look for and more. Whether you're after indoor, outdoor, feminized, regular, autoflower, they've got everything under the sun to keep you loaded on all the hottest genetics, producing the most fire bud you've ever had. I hear they've got some incredible lines from Heavy Days still in stock. If you want to go check that out, make sure to do it before it's too late. Big shout out to Seeds Here Now. We appreciate you so much. As usual, a massive thank you and shout out to our good friends at Copit Biological. If you want to harvest the best crop to date, you have to ensure your garden is pest and pathogen free, pumping on all cylinders. If you're battling spider mites, check out the incredible Spidex Vital. Likewise, I know a lot of you guys are battling aphids at the moment. Check out their Apipar-M. This is another product I absolutely stand behind from Copit. If you want to get rid of aphids, get rid of spider mites, check out the Apipar-M. Check out the Spidex Vital. Big shout out to Copit Biological. Thank you so much. We appreciate your ongoing support. The final piece of the puzzle to ensure that your room is killing it is our good friends at Pulse. Their sensors are second to none, industry leading, and just recently they announced the Pulse Hub. What more could you want? An integrated unit for all of your sensors to ensure that your garden is automated and tracking all of the variables you may not be consciously aware of. From VPD to PPF, dew point, temperature, humidity, so much more. You've got to get yourself a Pulse sensor, guys. It has revolutionized the way I grow flower and increased the terpene content, the cannabinoid content, the yield, so much more. Shout out, as always, to our friends at Pulse Sensors. Likewise, if any of you guys have been listening to the show, you know that I am passionate about helping people transition to vaporized options if they're considerate about their respiratory health. And for me, Dynavap are the world leaders in this. Dynavap helped me to transition from bongs to vaping, and I tell you what, I've never looked back. Their unit is the most potent, the most highly replicating of a bong hit I've ever come across. And through their incredible M unit, I was able to successfully get off bongs a few years ago now. Truly one of the most innovative and interesting vapes on the market, using a totally different design to others you have found. Check these guys out. You will not be disappointed. Massive shout out to Dynavap. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we want to give a massive shout out to the incredible Patreon gang. Without you guys, we could not continue to make episodes. If you want to get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive content just on the Patreon, including the likes of Mean Gene, Bob Hempill, Bodie, Trichome Jungle, so much more, be sure to go check out our Patreon. We give away genetics every month to our supporters, along with artwork, vapes, sensors, so much more. Please check out the Patreon, guys. I promise you, you won't regret it. You'll get your money back in swag for helping support a show you love. Thank you so much to everyone from the Patreon. We got a good one today for you, gang. I know a lot of people have been asking for this a long time. I've been thinking about it, and we finally got the stars to align and we made it happen. A big shout out to our buddy, a long-time fan of the show as well, Daz of Night Owl, taking the time to come chat with us. Incredibly grateful as always. So without further delay. Alrighty, gang. Welcome back for another one. And on today, we have one of the biggest names in the auto breeding world, head of Night Owl Seeds, a company that is synonymous with some of the highest quality auto flower breeding in the world. A massive thank you and welcome to Daz for joining us today. How you doing?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here on the show. I've been a fan since the very first episode, and like I was just saying before we started, I've never felt like I was at the level to even be associated with the guest you've had on before. But yeah, thank you for having me, and I'll do my best.
Man, I love that because it's like it speaks to the organic roots that a lot of people in the industry have. You know, like yourself, I started out as a fan, just watching Subcool, and who would have thought we'd be here chatting to each other one day? So that's really cool to hear. And you know what's funny? You referenced episode 1. I haven't mentioned it to you. You got to be told this before. You got that same southern accent that Duke has in episode 1.
spent a long time down in South Carolina, so that's interesting to hear. Yeah, I've definitely my accents, I'm sure, picked up from quite a few locations. I've moved around all over the place from Maryland to South Carolina to West Virginia to Colorado to Boston or Massachusetts to now I'm up in Maine. So I've been all over the place, but yeah, definitely Southern roots there.
Wow, that's awesome to hear. You truly have been a bit of everywhere by the sounds of it. I'd love to ask you, how would you, just as a quick one, how would you describe the state of the East Coast scene at the moment? The impression I get is that it's sort of booming and going through a bit of a boom phase. How would you describe it?
It's incredible. Honestly, I've had some of the best flower in the world in New York City here recently within the past year. The scene there is incredible. It reminds me of the associations in Barcelona or the coffee shops over in Amsterdam, except a little bit more lax. The events they have in the city are just absolutely stellar. You feel like you're in a movie. You'll go. It's just a big office building. You get on the elevator, go up to the 12th floor. The doors open, the smoke just billows into the elevator, and all of a sudden you're in a lounge with a little coffee bar, food, vendor tables everywhere, couches, just it's phenomenal. They really have something special going on. I'll say Virginia as well is really doing big things. So, which is a state I never really associated with ever having legal cannabis. They were always I got arrested in Richmond, Virginia when I was like 18 years old for weed. So that's a place that I never ever thought would boom the way it has. But yeah. Oh, then again, when I was 21 years old. So yeah, Virginia, I've had a shady past with as far as that's concerned. But some of the best weed I actually ever smoked was um. I used to have a business or a job that would take me on the road overnights, and I would stay in a hotel in this little college town in Virginia. And the girl at the front desk of this hotel, eventually we became friends. I'd be there every other week and eventually asked, you want to come smoke some weed or whatever? And she was like, yeah, sure. And one time I didn't have any, and I was like, you know where I could like get some? And she was like, yeah, my husband, come over to our house. And I went over, and it was like the first time I ever had fresh homegrown, and it was just like a game changer. I was like, oh my god, it was White Widow, and still to this day, it was like some of the best flower I've ever had in my life. So yeah, Virginia and I have and cannabis have a nice little love hate relationship. But yeah, the East Coast is doing great things. I can't wait for the rest of it to open up.
Yeah, totally. What a cool story, from Virginia and White Widow. What a brilliant sort of like kind bud introduction to have. I'm sure that was epic. Out of curiosity, have you ever been tempted to pick up a pack of White Widow from somewhere and chase that holy grail?
I really want to try the Sharon White Widow that's around. It's I haven't asked anybody for it in a few years. I used to reach out to breeders all the time and people that I looked up to and tried to like let it be known, I'm not out here to rip anybody off or do anything shady. I'd love to like try some of this, even if it's just the flower, not necessarily getting a cut or anything like that. And yeah, just never had any luck. And it's weird the way this has kind of progressed. I remember in-house genetics, maybe 2015, 2016, reaching out and being like, man, I'd love to like collab on an autoflower. And he was just kind of, maybe one day. And just last year, he reached out to me and was like, man, I'd love to collab on an autoflower. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. All right, that's awesome. Let's do it. So I sent him some pollen. He made the seeds. I'm not sure if he's got those going quite yet, but he sent me pictures of the seeds a couple months ago. So yeah, it's a weird turn of events the way autoflowers have kind of started to be more recognized by the photo period world, and people are starting to understand that they do have a place in this.
Yeah, totally, totally. Out of curiosity, are you willing to let out of the bag which pollen did you send him? And if you could just pick a couple hybrids you'd love to see made out of his library, what's on the radar for you?
I believe I sent him the crinkled cookies feminized pollen, and I think I also sent him some Wizard's Apprentice feminized pollen. And I think it was the crinkled cookies that he ended up using. And I'm pretty sure he used it to maybe a slurricane. I think he had a something black cherry. I'd have to look at my notes to see exactly what he was going to use on that. But I had made a cross with the slurricane cut that was floating around back in 2019 or so, maybe 2018, and it was the first time. And the only time that I think I've ever had a plant that was dudding is what it was called back then. Now I think it's, HLVD. But yeah, it just kind of died, just kind of stopped mid flower. And so those seeds, that seed stock, I just set aside and never touched again because I didn't ever want to reintroduce that or like grow anything that had that viroid and possibly contaminate other stuff. So I still have that seed stock locked away separate from from everything else, just maybe for future reference someday. But um, sorry, I forgot what the question was.
You answered it. Which hybrids would you like to see? And you nailed it. Slurricane would be a great pairing. I'm a fan of it for sure. And you just mentioned HL, the hop latent viroid, and the thing that you just stimulated in my mind was an interesting thought, right? You often hear about it in the context of clones because they sort of pick it up and then it's just in there. You really don't hear about it with autos. And then I guess it got me thinking, have you seen plants with what you suspect, not necessarily your own, but just via other people, auto plants that have it? And how does it manifest? Like, is it, because I guess I'm wondering, would it just be like lower yield and stuff like that? Or would it maybe stress the plant in a way that's like, how sometimes the auto will just like stop growing and just go into flower at like this really small stage? Have you seen any autos infected, and what was the symptoms looking like?
I really haven't, none that I've been aware of. We were just speaking again before the interview, and I have seen some seed stock going around from other people that the plants are just kind of stunted an inch or two tall consistently across the board, all with a certain seed stock. And so I've seen people say, have these been tested for, the hop latent viroid or anything? But I really can't say that I've ever seen it in autos before. But that's not to say that it isn't out there. I pretty much just stick to my own stuff that I'm familiar with, stock that I've had for the past decade or more at this point. So, yeah, I can't say that I've ever actually seen it for sure, other than the one time where I think I got the dirty clone of the Slurricane.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And I was thinking like it's actually an interesting question in that, like, who knows, maybe in some sense autos are less prone to hop latent viroid. I mean, obviously there's the literal aspect of they're not really cloned, so they don't stay around long enough. But also maybe there's some other sort of underlying genetic trait associated with being an auto that, who knows? It's an interesting one to ponder. But to get us back on track, I wanted to quickly ask you, because a question I've wanted to ask you for a long time, because you're the man to answer it, is, in your mind, what has been the most impressive autoflower you've ever tried? Do you remember like that moment where you were like, wow, this is it?
Hmm. I mean, I have some favorites for sure. I think to me the most impressive thing that I've ever come across with them, my older brother and some of his friends were my toughest critics. And for a long time, you know, I started growing, then I found out some of his friends were growing and they had some clones and stuff that I really wanted to work with. And it took me a few years of growing autos and playing with autos to get to a point where they used to claim, we can taste the auto flower in this. And I was like, well, what does it taste like? Can you explain to me what the auto trait tastes like? And they could never really express that. But eventually I grew some stuff and they were like, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, that's an auto. And they're like, this is this. I was like, yeah, that's an auto. And at that point, they let me have access to a subcool clone of Space Dog, which is like the thing that growing up in kind of my circle was like the end all be all top tier clone of that time. And they let me use that and I worked with it. I came back to them years later with the flower from it, and the dude that held that cut smoked it and was just like, "This is the space dog. Like you did it." And that was like kind of the high water mark of like, I know I'm on the right path here. I know this can be done. It just takes the proper work, the selections, and like just understanding kind of the plants and what you're selecting for. So that was like the first one of those, and then again with the Zamodelica Express is one that I'm super proud of, and really nice true sativa in an autoflower format that's just super uplifting and heady. And now the sour diesel stuff that I've been working on here recently are some of the stinkiest autos I've ever come across, hands down. So I mean, there's a few. different kind of high water marks along the journey here. But um, as far as pinpointing any one specific moment, I mean, there's it just kind of continues to evolve every couple of years. There's something new that's just like, damn, I can't believe like this worked. So
Yeah, that's really an interesting point you raised there. I mean, the people will hate me if I don't ask. You know, there's a million and one sour cuts out there. Which ones do you like, and which one have you used in the project?
so in this one, I used the AJ Sour Diesel, and I've currently got the Albany Sour Diesel, Skunk Tech, Chaco. Got one from a gentleman, Cloney Soprano, who people say is like the real true sour diesel. But I mean, nowadays they have sour competitions every single year to see who has the real sour, and it's like there is no kind of one real sour anymore. And people say, the AJ Sour Diesel isn't like a true sour diesel, and it just that's what this is. The AJ Sour Diesel Auto is what I've been working on with this one, and now I'm using this pollen from this to cross to the other sour diesels to work those into auto format. But I had the J Plant Speaker Sour Diesel earlier this year, and that was fantastic. I've had some out in Colorado. There's a little club called Cervantes out there, and the guy there had a sour diesel that's super old, and that was real nice too. But yeah, this one is the AJ Sour Diesel that I've worked into auto, and that'll be coming out probably next year. I think I'm going to hold off and release the Blue Power collab this year, and then do the AJ next year.
Totally. Look, that's exciting. And as a side note, do you think AJ looks a little bit like Edward Norton?
Now that you say that, yeah, he does. Like
I've always
uh,
thought that.
I mean, AJ kind of has like a timeless young look. Like he looks like he's always in college. You know what I mean? So I got to meet him. I met him in the park in New York City this past year with him and Top Dog. I was like, damn, this is like a real New York cannabis history moment. I got a picture with both of them. It was just like this is awesome. So I mentioned to him, that I was working with him. I bought a little sack of AJ Sour Diesel straight from the man himself. I've still got it in my desk here with his little signature on it. And I was like, yeah, this is a pretty significant milestone in my life here. So, but yeah, he definitely I do see the Edward Norton resemblance now that you say that.
That's cool, man. I actually was looking at your Instagram last night and I saw that photo and I was like, that would have been a fun time in that park on that day. So
Yeah.
there you go. And just in the last question, I mean, you referenced the sour, but in the last questions, you referenced the Zamadelica Express. I wanted to formally ask, are you like myself? Are you more a fan of the sativas than the indicas? Are you impartial or are you more an indica guy?
Oh no, the sativas for me. With my breeding, I always and it's strange how this works. People like they think they like a breeder, but they really like their palate. And like I've unintentionally bred to help my ADHD and depression and all, just kind of like personal issues. And in doing so, it's helped a bunch of other people. Like they grow it and they find the same relief from these things that I've found. But yeah, 100% sativas for me. That's the space dog was like a super sativa. I found actually what I call the super sativa pheno within the Cosmic Queen, which is the space dog auto. And I kind of isolated that and been growing and smoking that for myself over the past couple of years, and that's a big fan favorite as well. And I just did some stuff with that one again here for the upcoming Halloween release. So the last time I released it was 4 years ago for Halloween. So it's a nice little reculmination of that coming back around.
Yeah, totally, totally. I love that. You know what's funny? I had a question about the Halloween stuff, and essentially what I wanted to ask was, I love how you do all these cool, unique little drops. You know, I'm sure other people do Halloween drops, but I feel like you have a lot of fun with it, so to speak. And I feel like there's a little bit of a sentiment in the community at the moment that things are all a bit, doom and gloom, and no one really seems like they're having fun anymore. I wanted to ask you, how do you keep it light, and what's your advice for people to keep cannabis and growing fun?
I mean, I know it's cheesy, but you got to love it. Like I would be doing this whether I was selling the seeds or not. Like this is what my mom sat me down in sixth grade because I was no good in school, and she was like, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do with your life?" I was like, "I want to." live on the side of a mountain somewhere tropical and grow weed. I was like, that's it. That's like the dream for me. And I mean, I got partially there. I was on the side of a mountain in Colorado growing weed, but yeah, no real tropical location quite yet. But yeah, you really don't get in it for the wrong reasons. It's not a cash grab situation. A lot of people get into it thinking this is going to be like some big booming industry. I remember everybody wanted to be a master grower for a time when that was like a the term going around, and everybody thought it was like big bucks. And yeah, you just can't get into it for that reason. That's not what it's about. The plant won't treat you right if that's how you treat it, and that's really kind of as simple as that. As far as keeping things um, invigorated, so to speak, man, me and my buddy Zawan, who's my graphics guy, we just have an absolute blast with like coming up with new concepts and new ideas. For this upcoming Halloween one, we're doing the collab with Sin City Seeds. They're in Las Vegas, obviously. It finally gave me the opportunity to do some like Hunter S. Thompson Fear and Loathing stuff and coming up with all the designs for that, coming up with like we got some posters coming out. I've got like 7 different sample posters coming, holographic ones, gold, like variants, just a bunch of different cool graphics. And it really like to be able to express an idea, um, an artistic idea to my buddy who can then put it into reality and create this thing from a vision that I have, whether it's just words that I speak to him, whether it's a sketch that I send him. It's just, it's phenomenal. And doing this business, I never wanted. I owned a business before this, and it was in the fishing industry, and it wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. It was something that I did because it was a job. And when I started growing, I was like, wow, this is like really where my passion is at. If I can pursue this somehow and like do enough to make a living where I'm doing what I love, like why wouldn't I want to do that? You know, even if it's not as lucrative as something else, it's like it's just way better. This is what I want to be doing, you know? So the freedom, when I say freedom, I mean, you're on a plant schedule and, you know, you're kind of locked into that and you're constantly doing upkeep and maintaining and all that. But yeah, it's just, it's all encompassing this business where I can flex my creativity through the artwork side of things, through the plant side of things, the interaction with the customers, seeing other people grow stuff that I've created and enjoy it is just so rewarding that I don't think there's anything else on the planet like it, at least for me personally.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think that what you speak resonates with a lot of people. You know, you've got to keep that element of passion alive. Otherwise, it does just become monotonous and a way to pay the bills. And, you know, there's obviously a complex answer to a simple question there.
Another, I don't want to cut you off, but another thing with that is I'm constantly working to create something new so it never gets stale. There's so many amazing photo periods out there, more and more every year that I'd love to work with and turn into auto format that, you know, that constantly keeps me motivated too, because it's like, damn, Gary Payton, like I know it's a cookie family strain and then people will shit on cookie stuff, but that Gary Payton's fire. I love that. Like I can't wait to work that in auto format for people. And you know, there's always something new. I'm working on a Pith auto with Pith Coast, which is like phenomenal. That's probably my favorite smoke recently. The Pith S2 number 3, the pineapple Pith from Top Dog. They're just incredible stuff. So there's always something new to be doing, and kind of one of the downsides of what I do is people always want stuff that I've released before, and to me, I love everything I've created. I'm a fan of, but to go back like takes away from the current work and the current projects that I have going. And I only have so much space and so many hours in a day that it's like I have to make difficult decisions on whether do I dedicate this space now to reproductions or do I continue working on new projects. So that's kind of like my biggest downside of the whole thing is just there's never enough time or space to do everything that I want to be doing.
Yeah, of course, of course. And look, I definitely want to delve into some of the more technical aspects. But while we're on the topic, you know, you're talking about cool and popular photo periods. Um, I want to know, you posted up an interesting photo where it was sort of like a grid of 9 different really popular strains that you had pollinated and were sort of considering converting to autos. Of those nine, which were some of the ones that sort of jump out to you as ones you think you might pursue?
I love that apples and bananas, man. That one really caught me off guard because I had no expectations going into it. But that one really was incredible to me. That and the honey banana, man, that is another one that's amazing. I've got the banana OG auto will be coming out next year as well. It's another one that I've been working on. But this honey banana is beautiful, and that the hash it produces is amazing. It yields real well. It's a vigorous plant. It's a very beautiful plant to look at. So that's another one that was in that run. Let's see, the thin mint I'd really like to do just for kind of the sake of that being like such a sought after strain for so long, and the fact that it took me like 8 years to get get a hold of like the real cut of it. I was like, man, well, I got to do this due diligence to actually put this into auto format. So that's another one. I'm trying to think of what else was in that. I think there was two, maybe two grids of nine each, but most of those I would fly out to Portland, Oregon to archive to grab from his dispensary out there. And it would take me multiple trips. And I did this two times. I did it when I was in Colorado. I went out multiple times, flew out, brought the stuff back. And then once I got out to Maine, I left those cuts out in Colorado and was like, you know what? I'll just do it again. I'll fly back out there, grab them again, whatever. So this time I took my girlfriend out with me, and we get out there. We could buy twice as many clones per day because she was there. We stayed out there for the weekend, loaded up with like 24, 30 clones, something like that. And then there was a hurricane in Boston, which was the airport we were flying back into. So our flight got delayed 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So I had in our little hotel room, I went out and bought lights, had a whole little veg garden in the bathroom of this hotel room. And we went out to dinner. I get a text from the hotel saying, there's been a smell of smoke on the floor you're staying on, and we traced it back to your room. You need to get rid of this, or else the police will be involved. Something like that. I don't know. I've got the screenshots in my phone still. I posted it up at one point, and I was like, I should probably take this down. But anyway, we get back to the hotel. I immediately drive back. I don't respond to the text, and I had stayed at this hotel six, 7 times before because I would stay in the same hotel every time. And it's a hotel from like the 1950s. It's just been around forever. All old people there at the front desk. They give you cookies when you check in. And the night before, it was a new person I'd never seen before, like when I checked in. And so I was like, oh, do you have those cookies or whatever? Kind of like trying to build rapport with this new person that I'd never seen before. And he's like, yeah, here you go. And so when I get to the hotel, I was like, I just wanted to let you know there's been no smoking in the room. But I understand what's going on and I'll get it taken care of, no problem. And there was a young girl behind the desk with him that was like, we went in there, we've got pictures, we know exactly what's going on. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I was like, go up to the hotel room. The door's locked, my key won't work for it. And I'm like, fuck, are the cops going to be downstairs, like waiting in the lobby when I go back down? Was this just them wanting me to get back there? So, like, whatever could happen. So I go back down, act like, nothing's wrong. Say, look, the key doesn't work. Like, is everything okay? And they were like, oh, let me get you a new key. The old guy was like on my side against this young girl that was working there. He was like, yeah, let me get you a new key. I was like, I'm so sorry. Just I've got my medical card. Like everything is above board. He was like, I understand. We just can't have that here in the hotel. It's like no problem. So took some empty suitcases out immediately to make it look like we just took everything out. Then I sat there. These plants, archive clones are the best possible clones you could get in the world. They're so healthy. They're teens. I mean, you can take three, four, five clones off what he sells as clones. So I started breaking stuff down, chopping it into little clones, putting them in Ziploc bags, labeling everything. I didn't want to mess anything up. It took me probably 2 hours to actually break everything down and then really take the actual, not the decoy suitcases, but the real suitcases out with everything. So I've got the clones, I've got the snips as well, packed in two suitcases, take them out and just never go back there. And that was like the end of that. Went to some Motel 8, just like the lowest tier hotel you could ever stay in. The people next to me looked like homeless kids, like in the room next door. I mean, we got a smoking, like a cigarette smoking room, which you don't find anywhere anymore. So I was like, all right, this place isn't going to give two shits about what I got going on. They've got way bigger fish to fry. They had literal prostitutes in the parking lot. So I was like, this is perfect. We're not going to get in any trouble here. Anyway, the flight gets delayed 3 days. So these clones are just, they're growing. They're like, they're whatever. So pack them up. Finally get on the flight. Well, okay, we get to the airport and the flight gets delayed again as we're there after I've already sent my bags to be put on the plane. So I'm like, shit, well, we got the hotel rooms for another night anyway. Let me pull the bags off the flight, go back to the hotel room. We'll leave in the morning. So I asked them to pull my bags. They're like, all right, go down to the baggage claim area. They'll be down in about an hour. An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by. I go back up to where you check in. I'm like, hey, they said they were going to pull these. The lady behind the desk is like, they didn't pull them. They're on the flight. Go now. You've got a half hour to catch your flight. They're on there. And I was like, I just want to explain. I don't want me to get on this flight and my bags stay here. I was like, should I stay here and send my girlfriend back to the East Coast? And that way we've got our bases covered. And the lady behind the counter is like, no, they are on there. They're on the flight. It's like, all right, let's go. So we get on the flight. Um, Another family boards right after us, starts throwing up on the flight, like a few rows behind us. They kick them off the flight and they find their bags within 5 minutes to remove them off the plane. I was like, all right, well, if they found their bags that quick, then ours definitely have to be on here. We take off. I get a text in the air mid flight saying, your bags are on their way. Actually, yeah, we were flying into Boston. All right, bags are on their way. They're on board. Everything's good to go. We land. It's like 6 in the morning. The bags aren't there. She's like, oh, fuck. So they're like, all right, you got to go talk to whatever the bag agent now. Explain what's going on. They'll track your bags down and they'll get them to you. So I go. It's like this 70-year-old woman. I'm explaining, we lost our bags. She asked what's in them. I'm like, all right, do I just tell her the truth here? Like, what the fuck's gonna what's going on? So I tell her clothes, toiletries, all that stuff. And then I say there's hemp in there as well. There's hemp plants. I just flew out to the East Coast to grab these specific hemp cultivars that are highly sought after for my business. It's like it's very important that I get these. And the lady's like, my husband just started growing. That's so funny. And like this old woman and her old husband, I guess since things went legal in Massachusetts, had decided to pick up the hobby. So she was super intrigued by the whole thing and like really, really helpful. But anyway, she was like, yeah, I appreciate you telling me this. Like, we'll get your bags to you as soon as possible. She's like, it looks like they're going to be flying into New York. We'll let you know. Another day goes by, I hear nothing. Another day goes by, I hear nothing. On the third day, my bags just show up on my porch, plants in them. They all look like shit. They've been without light for, 3, 4 days at this point. But man, I pulled them all out of it, got them set up in the tent, vegged them all back out, put the clones into root, got a couple to root, but luckily I had saved the actual rooted like things that I had chopped all the snips off of, potted those up immediately, and within a month they were beautiful, healthy plants again. And that's one of like the amazing things about cannabis. Man, it wants to live. So I've got pictures of all that. I documented the whole thing because I knew one day I'd want to tell the story and share like just how crazy these experiences are. But I think it rewards you if you put in the work and you're dedicated to it. The plant knows that. You know what I mean? Like it picks up on those vibes. So yeah, I don't even remember where we started, but oh, you were talking about the grids of the nine plants each. So yeah, most of those cuts came from Archive there. But yeah, all of them were amazing. If you ever need clones, Archive in Portland, Oregon, can't find better clones than there.
I can attest, certainly. I too have visited the dispensary in Portland many moons ago and picked up some plants and tried to make them magically appear in Australia. Sadly, didn't quite work. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, and this is a bit of a change of pace because I love that answer, but I really want to get into what was your thoughts on some of the early auto work and specifically Lowrider? What was your thoughts on Lowrider?
I never tried it. I saw it many times. I've never grown it. I've never smoked it. I appreciate what the joint doctor did to popularize it. I saw it in high times all the time, and it intrigued me. The reason I got into growing autos was I moved down to South Carolina. I used to go down to South Carolina and spend my summers down there because that's where my grandparents lived. After high school, I moved down there to go to college and start this business. And I made some connections to get herb. And after the third or fourth meeting, I ended up getting jumped and robbed and this whole messy situation. And I was like, well, it's not worth this to do the plant thing. What's the fastest, or it's not worth like the violence aspect in order to get this shitty weed. What's the fastest way that I can actually get a harvest? And autoflowers was that. So that's what got me into growing autoflowers in the first place.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting introduction. Why don't we do it? Why don't we go back to the start? Tell me about your first memory, first interaction with cannabis.
So I told this story on the Dark Horse podcast before about my older brother. Yeah, I'd say the first time I smoked was with my older brother going to this little drag strip. I remember drinking some Tuaca, which is like this kind of orange liqueur, and smoking a joint and going to this racetrack and just being terrified. Just thought my throat was closing up. I was like, "Oh, this is laced. I must be allergic to it. I'm gonna die." Blah blah blah. And then after that, I remembered, oh my God, when I was in fourth grade, I guess my brother was in sixth or seventh grade, my mom found his bowl and his bag of flour and called the cops to our house to arrest him or scare arrest him. And that was truly my first. Well, that wasn't even truly my first. That was the first of like, I know what's going on. But before that, my dad had 18 acres down in Maryland, and he had this old country boy that would grow his own tobacco. And mixed in with that tobacco were cannabis plants, and I just didn't know because I was, 4 or 5, 6 years old at the time. So that was like my very first introduction to it was that, without even knowing. But yeah, there's been a few kind of first introductions, whether I was aware of it or not. But yeah, I'd say probably fourth grade was the first time that I really was like, what's going on here?
And do you remember the first time you got high? Was it the first time you smoked, or was it a subsequent time after?
No, it was the first time I was going to that racetrack, and we were in my brother had a '78 Cadillac DeVille with like a full sound system, and I even remember like the some of the songs we were listening to at the time. It was the very first Ludacris album and some mindless self indulgence, and it was just a weird mix of music. But yeah, that was the very first time was going to that drag strip.
Sure. And how did your interest in cannabis progress over the years towards, say, when you did your first grow?
Um, there's a band called 311 that everybody makes fun of as like one of the worst bands in the world or whatever. But their first few albums had so much cannabis related, so many cannabis themes to them throughout that it just intrigued me that this plant could like motivate and bring people together the way it did. And then seeing their home videos of like concerts and stuff, it was like more of a modern kind of dead scene, parking lot scene where, everybody was like smoking and trading and doing that sort of thing. And again, nowadays they're almost looked at as the butt of a joke, but back then they were like something really, they're still really special to me. I mean, their modern stuff does sound like a parody of themselves, but back then it was like this special thing of like just this niche community of people that were into this music and this smoking and this kind of mindset of like, fuck what people are going to tell me to do. It's not all about money. It's about community and like bringing people together and sharing and joy. And that kind of influenced me so heavy as a kid and still does to this day that kind of continued throughout my entire life. And that was like when, like I was saying in sixth grade, when my mom sat me down, that was so heavily influenced by them. I hadn't even smoked at that point. It was just like, man, to see the effect that this has on people, the positive effect that it has on people really left an impression on me, and I wanted to explore that as soon as I could. And so that was kind of like the through line of what's motivated me through all of this was that early on introduction through music.
And so, I mean, at first, were you growing photo period?
Yeah, yep. My first grow was in high school, just some bag seed stuff. And I remember finding out that you had to flip the lights to get them to actually flower. And it's so funny. So these plants we were growing at my buddy's house in his garage, in like the attic of his garage, and his mom found them and was like, "You got to get these out of here." So we took them over to my dad's farm, and then he found them and was like, "You got to get these out of here." So I threw them in the back of a truck and like started to leave, and he saw me leaving with these plants in the back of a truck. Was like, "No, you can't do that. Bring them back." And so I kept them there on the farm and grew them out there. But I remember asking my buddy, like, how did you get these so big and like so healthy? And he was like, Miracle Grow spikes and diesel fuel. And for 2 weeks, I was just like, what the, do I really put diesel fuel on these? Like, I shoved 100 Miracle Grow spikes in these pots. And then years later, I was like, bro, like, did you? He was like, I was just fucking with you. That was a joke. I was like, oh my God. All right, fair enough. But yeah, that was my first grow. And I remember what I did find out about, putting them on 12/12. Um, my buddy's dad came over to visit and was like so stoked to check them out. And they were in a bathroom, and he left the overhead bathroom light on that wasn't on a timer as they were in flower. And I was out of town doing my business stuff, and I came back and the light was on, and I freaked out at him, and it soured our relationship. Like the dude was like, "Do you think I would yell at your dad like that?" Like I was like, I'm sorry. I was just this is something that I've invested so much time and so much energy into, and like I don't know. I just felt like this whole thing just got fucked up for nothing. Like I shouldn't have told anybody what I was doing to begin with, and then for this to happen was just like, oh. But anyway, we worked it all out. And everything was good, and he's still a friend to this day. So yeah, no worries there. But at the time, it was like the biggest thing that had ever happened to me because I was so stoked to finally be in flower, like doing it. And anyway, they ended up being super long flowering Mexican sativa things that I chopped early and then took down to South Carolina with me. That was like my little little bumper crop sort of thing that yeah, I took down, and that got me over in South Carolina until I met people at the college down there to actually get flower from, and then all that other stuff transpired and got me right back into growing, but with autos. So this time I was serious about it. So
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about your first time growing an auto. Do you remember what it was? Was that the eureka moment, or was it a few more grows after that?
so I think the first would have been probably some Dutch Passion stuff, and I did it. I just found someone online that was doing it well and that was yielding well and that was having amazing results. Excuse me. And I just followed his method exactly. At the time, he was posting exactly what was going into. His name was Seymour Buds on autoflower.net. I bought the exact LED lights that he used that were called Hydro Grow from this company in the UK. Cami was the person's name that ran that company. I bought those. They were the penetrator LEDs, and they were just massive, massive panels. And then I started getting like Gotham Hydro LEDs was another company that was big at the time, so I would buy those. And I just followed exactly the same seeds that he had, the same nutrients that he had, and I ended up starting doing deep water culture. And so my first harvest was like 10 ounces off of a single auto. And I was blown away that I was able to do this. And it was like, just, yeah, that was the eureka moment. But the thing was, and this is not to throw, this is probably more on my skills at the time rather than genetics themselves, but it was like, I've got 10 ounces of shit that I don't really want to smoke. Like it's not good. It's lacking in almost every department. And I was like, well, this was my first run, so whatever. And then I moved on to other breeders and other genetics, and each time it got a little bit better and a little bit better. And I was like, you know what? People are doing this the right way. There's a formula to creating and making these things better. Let me follow that formula myself and try my hand at this. And that was kind of what got me started in the whole breeding aspect of things.
Before we jump into a bit more of like your story, I just want to quickly ask you more of, shall we say, a philosophical question, which is, I have been wondering this and other people have asked as well, do you think that to an extent breeding autos requires more skill, or do you think that simply it requires skill, but also there's sort of inherently like a bit of luck involved as well? at least in one step that you might go really good in your first generation, and that sets you up for success thereafter. But I guess I'm wondering, do you think it's just more difficult, or that it's difficult, but there's also a luck component?
Both for sure. It's absolutely more difficult. Every photo breeder that I work with is like, damn, this is what you do. Like by the time we get to working their strain into an auto, they're like, this is way harder. Even shout out to Seats Here Now. James Bean back in 2015, 2016 was like, these guys are doing real work. This is so much harder than photo period breeding. Like every aspect of it is more difficult. Um, there's no keeping clones. It's easy to make the wrong selection. It's easy to breed back the ruderalis stuff to um, impact the gene pool negatively. So there's a lot of like pitfalls that you can find yourself kind of jumping over. Um, but there's also a lot of luck involved. Absolutely. So it's not like, any one person is just going to be the best auto period breeder 100% of the time on default. It's a game of skill as much as it is, I lucked out and found the right things this time. I mean, maybe not as much. There's a lot of, running the proper numbers, making sure you have backup plans for every step of the way. But yeah, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of skill involved. But yeah, a lot of luck too.
Certainly, certainly, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the technical aspects of breeding. But I wanted to quickly ask you, I've only spoken to a very small number of people who have bred autos, but they've all sort of shared many common sentiments. One of them being that it's incredibly easy to sort of dud an auto line. And I guess I'm wondering, how often is it that you find you sort of say to yourself, I think I need to go back a couple generations, or I need to restart this, we've gone wrong at some point? Does it happen commonly, or is it a bit less common these days?
I'm knocking on wood right now because fortunately it hasn't happened too many times. There's maybe two two projects I'd say that I could go back and revisit and redo better than I've done before. Other than that, I'm really, really genuinely happy with everything that I've put out. Like I think it's all been really, really good. It's all been improvements upon what they used to be. Um, but yeah, it is easy to do that. I do think I don't know if epigenetics is the right term, but you can see stunting from one generation carried over into the seed stock of the next generation way more so than you would with a photo period. And I have noticed that. Same for, you grow a huge auto, um, of both parents being huge, grown perfectly, the seeds resulting from those come out impeccable. So there's definitely something to that and to locking in both negative and positive traits within the line. Um, but yeah, we can get into that, I guess, a little bit more when we talk about breeding. But really, you got to be there for them early on. There's a old Chinese saying, proverb thing that's like the best nutrient is the gardener's shadow. So it's one of those things where you really have to be there and care for them, especially the first 4 weeks or so.
Definitely, definitely. And there's two follow ups I want to ask you. But the first one is, what would be your advice for someone like myself who sees some of the photos you post and you're like, oh my God, that is the biggest autoflower? Like when you see a whole plant in a pot at harvest, you're like, that thing is huge. As you said, like really huge yield off it. What are some of the tips you would give people to help get an auto to that size? Because I think for a lot of us, it's very rare to see something go that well.
Um, hydro, you can't go wrong with autos. The deep water culture really lends itself to gigantic autos because there's no resistance to the roots. Same for cocoa, they get huge in that. Really, the fluffier the soil, the less resistance against the roots, the bigger and the longer they'll veg for. Um, if they run into too compacted soil, if it's too dense, it sends a message to the plant that, hey, we're out of space here. We need to do something. It's the end of our life. We want to reproduce. We want to carry on into the next generation. Let's flip into flower now while we have, ample space to do so. And so that's kind of one of the things is just giving them enough root space early on and having proper soil and, fluffiness to the soil so that the roots can really spread out easily and there isn't much resistance. Same, I mean, it's really, you can't overwater them. You can't underwater them. If you do either of those, they'll stunt out. It's really learning kind of the plant. And as I cross back to photos, breed them out to autos again, they get more resilient a lot of the times each generation. So, and I've also learned over the past 10 years of, you can transplant autos. They're not going to yield as much, but you can do it properly where it doesn't completely stunt them out and affect the yield. And nowadays, with things like auto pots and the tray to grow system, where they're taking up the amount of water they want to be taking up. Um, I mean, you can start a bunch in small pots in that sort of system, and then transplant them into bigger systems, and they just take off. They don't miss a beat. So it's really kind of developing the understanding of when to transplant them, when it's too late, when to cut your losses, and yeah, just there's there's no replacement for actually doing it. It's just kind of a hands-on thing. I could explain it 100 times, and until you actually do it and learn it and are hands-on with it, it just it's hard to wrap your head around. It's hard to grasp. It's kind of something that you have to do to learn it.
Yeah, certainly. And look, I want to ask a bit of a newbie question as someone who has only grown about 4 or 5 autos before. When people transplant the autos, I often hear them having this very particular focus on being, like, in a tactile sense, very gentle with the root ball. And of course, no one advocates for manhandling a root ball, so to speak. But I wonder, do you think that very, like, literally as gently as you can transplanting it and just so lightly tapping it down, you know what I mean? Like, do you think that sort of thing does make a difference, or do you think it's more about, like, the general health of the plant when we talk about stressing the plant out?
I'm a firm believer that the more gentle, the better. Yeah, to this day, that's something that I still focus on, and um, I rarely ever have help with anything in the garden. I do pretty much everything myself, from obtaining the clones to harvesting the F4 auto seeds at the end. It's all me. And if I ever do have somebody come in, that's the most important thing that I stress is if there's a transplant, I usually will explain to them exactly how I want it done and then do it myself. It's like I don't have I'm not good at delegating responsibility, and with this, it's like that's the most critical stage of the whole thing is like making sure to minimize the stunting as much as possible. Yeah, I absolutely believe in that. That's key.
Yeah, good answer. There you go. I wanted to ask on that topic, you've mentioned soil. I would love to hear a bit more about your grow style, just generally speaking, because, I do hear people at times say you should grow with lighter nutrients for autos. So love to hear your thoughts on that. But also, if you could tell us a bit about the awesome collab you have with our buddies at Builder Soil.
Yeah, so for the longest time, um, pretty much as soon as I stopped doing hydro, which Um, I stopped doing because as I started to grow more and more plants, I upgraded my pump to a big kind of like a pond sized pump, a big boy. I didn't upgrade the manifold or the tubing, so I was still running through all super small tubing, which created back pressure on the pump and then heated up the reservoirs and caused me to get root rot. And so I had to learn about um, what was it called at the time? Heisenberg tea was what people were calling it at the time, which was basically a worm casting tea with a few other things in it. So I used that to kind of get through and fight the root rot off, and it went from being a what was supposed to be a completely sterile environment into, well, now I'm doing some sort of hybrid hydro organic synthetic thing here. After that, I switched to super soil and I started mixing up the Vic High subcool style super soil. And what I would do for that was I would take a 5 gallon bucket and I would do the bottom half with a super soil mixed into Roots Original. And then the top half would be just unamended Roots Original. Well, out of the bag, it has amendments in it, but just Roots Original soil on top of that so that the auto would have time to establish in that before hitting the hotter stuff. Because if you planted them into hot soil, if you put them directly into the super soil, they would just stun out because it was just too much for them. So this would give the roots time to establish before hitting that hotter stuff. And they absolutely love that, man. I stuck with that for basically until 2 years ago. That was my methodology. Now I use, once I switched, so I always did, like I said, 5 gallon buckets, and then seeing all these auto pot grows and people just getting these absolute monsters in auto pots really had me scratching my head because I was always of the mindset that fuck automation, like that takes the passion out of it, that takes your skill out of it. Like that's just it's for mids, it's for corporate cannabis, whatever. And then I actually tried it with the super soil and could not believe the results. But because of how big and how quickly they grew in this autopot setting, they would eat through all the amendments that were usually enough to carry them through to flower. So then it became, all right, well, I got to figure out top dressing. Sometimes I'll have to hit them like in an emergency situation with some sort of organic liquid nutrients just to get them something faster. Um, but now I've switched to Build a Soil 3.0, which everybody told me was going to be too hot for autos, too strong. But man, they absolutely love it. So now I transplant into 3.0. I still start them out in Roots Original, transplant into the 3.0, into the 6.6 gallon auto pots, and you can't beat it, man. They are incredible.
That's awesome. And do you top dress? What are some of the amendments you like to use?
As of now, I haven't been top dressing. I've just been doing the 3.0. But I do have Build a Flower here, so if I ever do need to do that, I will. Um, I did have to top dress. I was doing a warehouse in Colorado about 2 years ago, and that was like my first major run in auto pots. And again, they just caught me off guard with how huge they got and how quickly they went through the soil. So I did have to top dress there. Um, but yeah, that let's see. As far as top dressing, yeah, build a flower is really the main one. I like to throw worm castings on top. I've started putting black trash bags, putting them out and putting them on the top of the soil so they have feeder roots at the very top when you lift it up. They'll even grow mushrooms and stuff under there. But anyway, so now in case of emergency, if I ever do need to top dress, the roots are right there ready to take it in. And that was something that I saw through Jeremy at Build a Soil through his videos. I think with our earth box, he pulled the cover back and showed all the feeder roots right there. And I was like, man, I need to implement this somehow with what I got going on. So that was kind of the impetus for that. But yeah, really, it's just Build a Soil amendments at this point. And as far as the collab stuff goes, um, he's amazing. I'd love to do like a proper auto flower soil collab with him, but to be honest, the 3.0 is kicking ass. So there's really not much. If it was a little bit fluffier, that would be good. But even as is, I mean, it works. It works amazing. The flower from it's phenomenal. So there's really just a few small tweaks that could be made to improve that. Like when we first started talking, he thought the 3.0 would be way too hot. So he made a very airy, very loose soil with almost no amendments in it. And that one he would have to top dress and work with. And as soon as I tried the 3.0, I saw other people trying it, and I was like, "Is that too hot?" And they were like, "No, man, it works great." So I tried it myself, and it was a game changer. So there's nothing really. I mean, I'd love to collab. I'd love to do an auto soil like we had talked about, but it's almost not necessary if you kind of know what you're doing with the 3.0 and kind of transplanting at the right time. If I wasn't transplanting into it, I would do the same kind of layered situation that I had done before with the super soil, where I'd put the 3.0 in the bottom of the pots and then an unamended soil light mix or something in the top. But my method now, I'm constantly transplanting in, so that works.
No, that's really cool to hear that the 3.0 works for you. And I was just sort of thinking, like it's been so cool and interesting to see how many people have been watching the Builder Soil YouTube series. Like it's so massively popular, and to see your genetics sort of shining in there, that must be really cool. While we're on the topic, while we're on the philosophical topics, I should say, I wanted to ask you this. What are your thoughts on this sort of perception that autoflowers are for beginners? They're a stepping stone to photo periods.
I think it's just I get it because of auto in the name, the perception of them, and that people think they're not as good. But the fact of the matter is, if you can grow an auto flower, you can grow a photo period. If you can grow a photo period, it's not necessarily the same. A lot of photo period people get their egos put in check real quick when they try to do an auto flower and stump them out, and just write them off as, these suck. They're exactly what I had in my mind of what an autoflower would be, a little popsicle bud, when in reality, you've got to change what you're doing in order to maximize an autoflower's potential. So this is no slight to photo periods at all. I love photos. I work with them every single day. But the fact of the matter is, in general, autoflowers are way more difficult. And if you learn to grow an autoflower well, you'll have zero issues growing a photo period. In fact, photo periods, I've seen it time and again where they actually make autoflower growers lazy because you can veg them for so long and you can play catch up with them. Where if you look at an autoflower, let's say a longer running one has 100 days life cycle, each day is 1% of its life. If you mess up early on, you're not getting those days back, and you fucked up kind of your foundation for the rest of its life. And there's no rewinding the clock. There's no re-vegging. There's nothing you can do at that point. So for a lot of photo period growers that do try autos, I tell them, you're going to stunt these out. Just go in expecting that, you're going to stunt your first few out, but give it a few tries. And once you get over that learning curve, the reward is phenomenal. Like the explosion of growth, the speed, the resilience of the plants once you get to a certain point in their life cycle. Um, it's awesome to see. I mean, you go in every day and you see the growth. Like even you visit your plants a few times a day, you can see different growth throughout the day. Like they're that quick at certain stages. And back to your top latent thyroid question earlier with autos, part of me wonders if the speed of their growth kind of is faster than the thyroid could catch up with. Like I know like the thyroid hangs out kind of a lot of times in the lower parts of photo period. So you can clone a healthy part at top, or even you can test different parts of the plant and it'll be present in some parts and not the others. So I do wonder if there's something to that of like just simply the sheer speed at which an auto grows does not allow for that to actually kind of manifest itself. But again, I've not seen them in autos that I am aware of that I could say, yes, exactly, this is, the viroid here in this plant. But yeah, I've been, again, touch wood here. I'm super fortunate that I haven't dealt with that at all. And I hope to never deal with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I can't say either way, but you're right. In a normal plant, the meristem doesn't attach to the xylem and phloem for a certain period of time. So you might be right, and because as you said, photo autos can really be taking off at a certain point. That's an interesting hypothesis. I wanted to ask you. I mean, given we've spoken about that, autos are now at the point where they don't need to be considered the stepping stone to something better. And I guess the implication that has been going on throughout this chat is that when done right, it's high quality. It's you can't really tell the difference. I would love to ask, with that in mind, where do you think the future of autos is heading? Do you think that we're going to get to a point? What I've heard other guests say in the past is that they'll become very common outdoors for commercial production.
Absolutely. I think even indoors for production. Years ago, when I first moved to Colorado, there was a photo period farmer there, 60 lights, just crushing it with photos, and he wanted to try autos. And so I set him up with seeds to do the whole run, and he was hooked. He completely turned his whole veg into flower at that point, and just had more and quicker turnarounds than he'd ever had before. And if you do it right, if you figure out kind of the recipe to success for you, and it's different for everybody. There's 100 ways to skin a cat, but he followed. I mean, it was basically like my grow. It was the super soil, and it was like everything was mine. It was my genetics, the super soil, and yeah, he just never looked back. Turned his whole grow into auto. He never had complaints from people that the quality decreased or anything like that. It was more profitable for him. It was more efficient, and he did pay a little bit more in power bills running 18 hours of light as opposed to 12 hours. But other than that, it made up for it in the end. So yeah, I think it is definitely a kind of the future of cannabis. And it's weird for me to say that. I've heard other people say it, but now sitting here thinking about it, it's like there is a lot of potential photo periods will never go away, nor should they, nor would I ever advocate for that. Again, I love photo periods. I don't want anybody to think I'm like some autoflower purist because I love it all. But autos are here to stay, and that's kind of the long and short of it. I've seen grows out in Oregon outdoors, auto flowers that were just monsters, just beautiful, beautiful fields of flowers. And yeah, it's a special plant, and when you learn it, when you figure out how to maximize it, there's it's hard to go back to photo periods.
Sure, sure. I love that story. And you've referenced a few times, if people want to give this a go, you probably will stunt them a few times, but you'll get there. Just for anyone who might be curious and thinking about giving it a go, what are some of those mistakes people often make that may lead to it not going so right the first few times?
Pretty much just what I mentioned before, just having too compact of soil, overwatering or underwatering. You've really got to be there kind of on a daily basis, lifting up the pots and checking to make sure, how are these guys? Well, nowadays you can, put a moisture meter in there, or you can use auto pots or whatever, and it's kind of just completely changed the whole game for auto flowers with kind of the evolution of grow technology. Um, it's much easier these days to get into it and not stun it. There's also way more resources available and way more people that have fucked up, and you can see where they've messed up in the past that now moving forward you can avoid their mistakes. But really, it's just I would say the medium is the number one thing of just not having too dense of soil or medium in general. And I do think as each generation moves, from an new photo back to auto, back to photo, back to auto, they do gain a little bit more resilience and tend to really just be a little bit hardier overall. So nowadays, autos aren't the same as they were 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago. It's just it's a constant evolution, and I think it's only getting better with the right selections. Again, as I mentioned before, it's not terribly hard at all to mess up and go back to some ruderalis looking stuff. But with good selections and good good grow set, good kind of skill set and knowledge beforehand, yeah, it's way easier to be successful with them now than ever before.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You can tell we've made there's been a big leap, and we'll jump into that in just 1 second. Something I forgot I hadn't actually asked you at the start. How rude of me. What have you been smoking on recently?
The Piff S2 and the pineapple Piff, and I just ran out of those. So I've got some honey banana here next to me. I've got some strawberry milk and cookies. Um, yeah, those have been the main ones here recently that have been in my rotation.
Look, I love it. Some beautiful examples in there. You've mentioned you've been fond of and you're doing some work with the PIF. Have you had a chance to try any of the other infamous NL5 Haze clones, like maybe the C5 or the A5?
No, I wish I had. I've got quite a collection of seeds made with those, but I haven't ran them yet. I'm sure, like you, we probably have way more seeds than we could ever actually grow. That's like, I'm a seed hoarder collector. I've got, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I've got about 16 totes behind me with seeds in them. So I've got, yeah, just my my life investment is in seeds. But yeah, no, I have not ever experienced those. Even the PIF, I never got to experience until the past, let's say, 18 months or so. And at first, I was like, this is interesting. But the more I smoked with it, the more it really, really kind of got to me. And this particular PIF S2 number three, I think, has something like 7% THCV, which I'd never had before. And so that's something I'm really excited to like work into auto format. But yeah, I can't get enough of the hazy stuff. I went to PIFCon this past year, and that was, oh man, that was a hell of an event. It blew me away. I had expectations for it, and it was far above and beyond anything I could have ever imagined. It was massive. Shout out to Piff Coast Farms for putting that on and making the Piff accessible to everyone. Because growing up, it was just something I'd hear about in rap songs. I never, thought I'd actually try it. It almost became like is this just a nickname like Kind Bud? But to actually have it and be able to like smoke it on a semi-regular basis now is, yeah, it's maybe because of the sentimental reasons of like growing up and not having access to it and hearing so much about it, but it's special. It's a good one.
Yeah, totally. You know what's interesting? I've been lucky enough to try the C5 and the A5, but I've never tried the PIF. So there you go, on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I definitely have recently been thinking, shout out to PIF Coast Farms. It's undeniable that PIFCon has been a success, and the fact they're going even harder is a sign of how successful the prior ones are. I'll probably have to get those guys on pretty soon, I reckon.
Yeah, let me also just say shout out to Lobster Fam Farms. One of the best growers I've ever had the pleasure of smoking his flower, man. He does stuff with that plant that's just phenomenal. The piff from him, the Harlem River Haze, the pineapple piff, they're just absolutely incredible. And I feel lucky to be in the same state as him, to be completely honest, man. He's a special cat for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out. It's always lovely to be gifted some beautiful herb. We've gotten so sidetracked. I best get us back onto our story, which is what was your first auto breeding? Was it intentional? Was it accidental? Lay the landscape for me.
It was intentional. My first auto to auto stuff. Actually, I didn't even start out with auto to auto. My first auto breeding project was what would become Sour Stomper for Mephisto Genetics, and it was their sour crack that I had. So in 2014, I moved my little cousin out to Denver, Colorado, and sampled probably 250 different strains of cannabis. We got there on the day that rec stores legally opened. There's kind of this famous Anderson Cooper. He's a news anchor, or he was a news anchor over here. I have no idea what he's doing now, but he sent one of his reporters out to Denver to cover the opening of these pot shops, is what they called them. And she went on this like cannabis bus tour from dispensary to dispensary. And anyway, the first place they stopped at, me and my cousin were in line to get flour from. So me and my little cousin are standing there, like you can see the video online of us like in line waiting to get weed here as they're doing this tour. And anyway, this went viral because she ended up getting high, like and doing her news report super laughy and chatty, and you could see in her face she was just stoned. Like even Anderson Cooper called her out on it. Was like, "Are you sure you didn't imbibe at all?" And yeah, so during that time, Grape Stomper was like my favorite of these like 200, 250 strains that we tried. So immediately when I got back to the East Coast, I started trying to source those seeds, and they were just sold out everywhere. But I found there was a website called Canazon out of the UK, and they had a pack of Grape Stomper OG, and it was their last pack they had of it. And I got it. I had them send it stealth, and it came to me, and it was a 10 seed pack. I ended up getting like 12 or 13 seeds in it. And I reached out, I was like, man, are you sure you sent me the right seeds? Like, there was too many seeds in here, like, just super suspicious of the whole thing. So, like, who would get extra seeds? You know what I mean? And so I kept a mail from that in Maryland as I was growing down in South Carolina. I had my buddy from high school kind of take over my garden there in Maryland. He didn't even have a car. His mom would drive him to this spot that I had, and he would water the plants on a daily basis. And I would drive 12 hours one way each weekend to go up and take pictures of these plants to make sure everything was going all right. But anyway, there was a grape stomper male that I didn't know much about breeding. I'd done a lot of research, and it had tacky stems, and you just rub it, and you could smell the grape even when it was in veg. And I was just like, this is like, there's something special with this. So I kept that male alive. Anyway, down in South Carolina, I had the sour crack growing, a Tyrone Stomper, and some other stuff. I was out for my job. I usually would take my dog on the road with me every day, but this day I left her home. I was renting a house. My dog was there. I come home. There's a note on the door saying, this property is going to be inspected by the sheriffs. This house is foreclosed on. I was paying my landlord. He wasn't paying the bank. So the house I was in went into foreclosure without me being any wiser about the whole thing. So I immediately took those two plants, threw them in the back of a truck, drove up to Maryland with them, had them there, and was like, you know what? I've got this grape stomper male here. I should like do something with these. So I put the pollen on both the Tyrone Special and the Sour Crack, and those became Sour Stomper and Tyrone Stomper, which were the first photo to autos, the first ever breeding stuff that I did. So, and still to this day, it's some of my favorite. Like I love that. That was like really, truly the Grape Stomper and auto format. It's they're both phenomenal plants. But yeah, that was my first interaction with breeding.
Yeah, wow.
And from there, I was hooked. It was off to the races.
That's so interesting. Okay, and then so how did it unfold from there? How did you get hooked up with the Mephisto guys?
So I'd been following them online, and their stuff was like the first stuff that was like, damn, this is a game changer for me. This is like the next level autos. And so we became friends on autoflower.net. I'd followed him on Mitch on there and on IC Mag and was just a big fan of everything that he was doing. You could tell he was doing it right. And he was doing the proper selections and running numbers and doing real true breeding work to make this plant better. And that really spoke to me. So I started growing all their stuff. I would document the shit out of it because I was like super OCD about that. I would get the VPNs and like run all my pictures through Imager to erase all the exit data and all that stuff. And we just became like friends that way. And I asked him before I did the pollination, like, do you mind if I do this or whatever? And I sent him the F1 seeds and he grew them out. I was like, dude, these are like the frostiest plants we've ever seen. Like, these are amazing. And so I was like, that's my gift to you. At the time, I was trying to get a license to grow in Maryland because they were about to go legal, and I had him write me a nice little kind of recommendation review thing that I could give to potential employers, people that got licenses that like put me in a good light and said, this dude knows what he's doing, but in a professional professional way. Um, and so yeah, they continued to work that. And I went over there to Spain in 2015, and that's when we were running the F3s and helped do the pollinations on that. And actually, just found my old Imager account recently within the past 6 or 8 months with all the pictures from Spain where I was there, like helping with the pollinations and doing all the plants. And I was literally sleeping on the floor of their like farmhouse, helping to grow there for 3 months and move these projects forward. And it became the first artisanal Mephisto release. And yeah, it was. I fell in love with every aspect of it. Mitch had reached out a couple of times because he was like, can we get you over here? How do we like get you to be a part of this? And, make this all work out. And I just didn't have anyone to watch my dog at the time, and I was engaged. And my girlfriend, my fiance at the time, did not. She didn't smoke. She didn't like that I did what I did. I ended up moving in with her in West Virginia, and not to go on a tangent here, but one time we had some drama with the neighbors, good old boys that didn't like me. I was a newcomer or whatever. Anyway, fights happened, cops got involved. I was harvesting downstairs at my ex fiance's place. Get a knock on the door. I guess I should say the night before there was an incident with some guns involved. Whatever. The cops came out. They said, "Look, you're in a stand your ground state. You're armed. I have a little bit of a background in competitive shooting. I had my concealed carry permit. I did it all the right way. Don't break the law while you're breaking the law, sort of thing." So, um, yeah. Anyway, the cops basically told me to shoot this person the next time they came over and started shit, and I was just like, through all my training, I was like, I don't want to go through that emotionally. I know like the consequences of that on a person to like put themselves in that situation, but also I want to protect myself and my family and whatever. So anyway, next day something happened. Everything I thought was good after that. I went downstairs, started harvesting, have my headphones in as I'm harvesting, don't hear shit. Dogs start barking upstairs. I come upstairs. As soon as you open the door from the basement, you're facing the front door. And there was a cop with his 1911 drawn. I'm staring down the barrel of this 45 caliber pistol. And it wasn't the first time that I'd stared down the barrel of a gun. I looked in the cop's eyes. I could see he was like an older guy, a mature guy. He wasn't trigger happy. I saw he had trigger discipline. His finger was not actually on the trigger. I smell like weed. I've got weed on my hands. I see out of the corner of my eye, there's hand sanitizer. It's like, don't move, don't move. I've got my hands in there. I'm like, sir, I was just downstairs jacking off. I need to hit this hand sanitizer real quick. Grab the hand sanitizer, rub it on my hands to try to get the resin and the weed smell off. Open the door, lock it behind me so he can't go in. Throws me down on the ground. I had my pistol on my hip. He takes that off. He's like, "Is this the gun that was involved with whatever earlier?" I was like, "No, that was inside in the living room, whatever." Um, Put me in handcuffs, throw me in the back of the car, and this was a small little West Virginia town, but the FBI was like right right there, the next town over. So there was like six different agencies all in our driveway. The neighbors were over there, and the neighbor literally had just gotten out of jail, known criminal, but he was like friends with the police officers. So much so that the night prior, it took us like 4 hours to actually get a cop to come out to even like talk to us because he had called in and told his side of the story. And they were like, well, there's no need for us to go out. Everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the person that they wanted to press charges on me as I'm sitting in the back of the car, they're trying to call. They couldn't get a hold of him. 2 hours goes by. They're not listening to me. I'm trying to explain my side of the story through the back of the cop car window. They're just, fuck this kid, this out of towner, blah, 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 whatever. Eventually, they get a hold of the dude, and the dude was like, no, he was standing his ground. He was on his property. He did nothing wrong. I don't want to press charges. They let me go, gave me my gun back. I didn't have any keys on me to go in the house, so I had to sit outside without a phone in a snowy West Virginia holler for like 3 hours until my chick got home from work. She's like, I was trying to call and text you. I knew something was wrong, but anyway, that was like the writing on the wall of I got to get to a legal place in a legal state, and that's when I decided, fuck this. I'm done taking these risks like this, and that was like that time to go to Colorado. That was kind of how that all happened. What'd you ask? Let me get back to the actual question.
No, no, that was it. That was it. How you got hooked in with Mephisto. Okay, so I wonder what are some of the standout strains from that period that you really stand behind and think are just awesome?
With Mephisto stuff,
Yeah, just any of that early stuff you worked on.
I love the Sour Stopper to this day. It's one of my favorites. It's an amazing strain. I've got a lot of love and respect for what I did with those guys. Um, I think they're like some of their stuff's been the high watermark for a lot of the autos, especially at the time. Like the Ripley's OG, the Walter White, a lot of their older stuff was just phenomenal. I haven't kept up too much with any of their newer stuff, but I still go back and dabble in my old Mephisto seed stock. Even before then, Secret Garden Seeds was like another company that Mitch had before Mephisto, and I've still got my auto stock from them from back in the day. And like I have a lot of respect and a lot of sentimental value in those seeds for me, and I still love them to this day, and still go back and check them out every once in a while. But yeah, the Sour Stomper for sure, the Walter White, the Ripley's, they were all really really nice.
Yeah, some incredibly memorable strains there that even in Australia, I remember we're getting grown out quite a bit. So shout out to all the people who got to enjoy that. So, I guess at a certain point that chapter wrapped up for you and you moved on to Night Owl. What was the inspiration for starting your own project, Night Owl?
Um, we just kind of had creative differences, I guess, is the most diplomatic way to put it. Different visions for how the company should proceed, should move forward. Um, yeah, I don't really want to get too deep into it, but yeah, let's just say creative differences.
Sure, sure. And so, what was the first project you worked on under the name Night Owl, at least in your mind?
The Wizard's Apprentice, the Blue Microverse, and the Zamodelica Express were my first Night Owl releases. I released those all at the same time. Um, so that's the Blue Microverse was Blue Magoo BX2 from Dynasty, who's like another legend in my eyes. It was an absolute honor to work with his gear and you know to have him comment on like photos of my stuff and be like, "Damn, that looks like the Blue Magoo," and like I don't know, it was just it gave me it was like the wind beneath my wings to keep moving and know I was doing the right thing and going in the right direction. Um, yeah, the Wizard's Apprentice was Cheech Wizard from Bodhi that I worked into auto format. And yeah, everyone loves Bodie, myself included. Nothing but admiration for all he's done. Like I think he's an unsung hero, especially nowadays. I feel like he doesn't get the reverence he deserves. Um, but yeah, he's phenomenal. He's an amazing cat, and I hope to one day shake his hand. He's a special dude for sure. And then yeah, the Zamodelica Express, which is the Zamodelica from A Seeds worked into auto format. And again, just the Landrace sativa stuff is just that's special. You know what I mean? Like everything I do is something that I really want to do and enjoy, and that's what it boils down to. Is just these are things that I love, and it's a really special feeling to bring something new into the world that hasn't existed before. And it's like artists do it, and chefs do it, and cannabis breeders do it. And it's just it's a really cool thing to experience and behold.
Yeah, totally. Look, so many epic points in there, and uh, mad love for Bodhi. I think he's made of pure love and light, and I agree with everything you said. He's just a pillar in the scene, and Professor P, 100%. Still one of the few breeders in my tier one category, and anyone who listens to the show will know that I love the Blue Magoo line. For me, very biased opinion, but I think Blue Heron, Blue Magoo BX2, the best seed lines you can buy. I want to ask you, moving on to some of the incredible work that we see under the banner of Night Owl, if you couldn't know any specific details about the grower, but could only recommend one pack of your seeds for someone, what pack would you recommend, just as, I guess, a general all rounder?
Probably the strawberry milk and cookies remix because that's the version that's currently available. It's a flower that will make you say, "Damn, this is an auto flower." There's it's frosty as all get out. It's got incredible terps. It grow. It's not the biggest plant overall, but it's the quintessential auto flower as far as structure, and it's just overall an amazing plant. So that would probably be my go-to recommendation for what's currently available worldwide out of my catalog for someone that's never grown an auto. Just yeah, that's what my gut's telling me to say right now.
I love that because I was lucky enough to try some of the original, and hopefully I'll be lucky enough to try some of the remix. And it was truly a beautiful strain, And I guess I wanted to ask for any breeder. There's a few strains that just really seem to hit, and I had jotted down a few. Cosmic Queen was another one that I felt really hit with the audience, at least in terms of what I could see, and Marathon OG. What do you think it is about these certain strains that really seem to become super popular?
The Cosmic Queen is with a few of my strains. It's like there's nothing else like it on the market. There's nothing else. It's you just don't find these flavors. Um, it's like a honeysuckle suntan lotion, creamy, just something special that you just it catches you off guard where you're like, what the fuck is this, man? This is like I can't even pinpoint a single flavor, and through the cure, even the flavor will change. It'll get cheesier and funkier, and I think people love that. They love the resin production of it. They love the flower, but really the that one in particular is super uplifting, sativa dominant, just really amazing, nice euphoric effects. The Marathon OG was like the first, in my opinion, really true OG auto where it was like, damn, this is like super OG. Um, it's a big yielder, super dense OG nugs. Just the terps are there. What was there another one you mentioned?
Oh, and I also had the milk and cookies on the list. I mean, there's so many, but those were just certainly some of the ones that I've seen very represented by people as grown and loved.
Yeah, I think they catch people off guard, and they're strong. They have amazing effects. They have amazing flavor. They grow well, and it's people don't expect that from an auto, and when they get it, it really resonates with people.
Yeah, totally, totally, and I'm sure you're lucky enough to have that feeling quite often. I'm on your website now. I can see that the Halloween drop with the blue power is coming. It's just one of the many collabs you've done. Obviously, Sin City, super well regarded. I call them a bit of a dark horse breeders breeder because you find their work pop up in other breeders' works and it flies under the radar. Like, in Cushmints, there's Sin City's work in there. Anyway, um, tell me a bit about this blue power drop and what would you like, what sort of traits does it bring to the table? What would people get excited for?
I definitely agree that he's kind of another one of the unsung heroes that's putting in the work and just doing it quietly and staying in his own lane. And um, yeah, he's a phenomenal dude. I got to hang out with him a couple times, him and his wife, and they're great people. We really hit it off. We had similar backgrounds with like skateboarding and music and stuff. So he's just a super good dude overall. But with the Blue Power, man, it's really kind of a blueberry master kush, just really, really nice, incredibly resinous, hardy, heavy hitting, just overall fantastic plant. It's got super fat, almost like Afghanica style leaves, super nice dark foliage. It fades beautifully, and the resin heads just fall off it as I was breaking up seeds of it earlier. I was just like, man, this is going to be such a nice extractor. I ran a couple through my little tumbler before deseeding, and yeah, they dumped heads. So I'm expecting good things for the solventless guys with that one. Which also, yeah, the strawberry milk and cookies and the remix are also both really nice washers. That's something I've kind of tried to start focusing on more over the past couple of years because it seems like that's where the market's going as opposed to back in my heyday, getting out the glass tube and blasting away and taking it to the vac oven and purging, and that whole process was like a ritual to me, man. I used to love chopping a plant and throwing it in a little cooler with some dry ice and freezing it up and then packing the tube and refreezing it and going out to town, just blasting away. But yeah, the solventless stuff has really taken off, and um, people have found some really good watchers in my stuff. One of my buddies, growers down in Virginia, he swears by the strawberry milk and cookies. So it's like strawberry milk, strawberry Nesquik flavored hash, and dumps. He gets like 6% returns. One of his buddies in Colorado got like 8.5% returns on a Wizard Stash remix. And he actually just hit me up recently, being like, "Man, I'm really looking forward to the Blue Power stuff." And yeah, the solventless stuff is just taking off. So while I'm not focused solely on that, because I feel like that's kind of a byproduct of some of the photo periods that I'm working with naturally. If I do my part properly, that trait's going to carry over. And since I don't wash myself, it's not something I've ever been like, I need to breed specifically for this, but it is something that I do keep in mind now during my selections.
Yeah, you got me wondering, do we need to see like a mountain trop cut of Tropicana Cookies autos, like it's such an infamously famous washer that you just set yourself up for success. But I wanted to ask you, on that topic, are you much of a concentrates guy? If so, what's your preferred type of concentrate?
So I used to dab exclusively pretty much. Well, I mean, I went from flower to dabbing, and then when I went to Spain, it was like an unknown thing over there. So I brought like a couple rigs over there to like give to the guys, and they were like, "What? What is this? What do we do with this?" And so over there, I like bought a whole setup to blast, and it kind of like changed a little bit of the game for them in some respects because well, I don't want to speak out of school here, so I should probably let them tell their story. Um, but yeah, that the dabbing was a huge part of my life. I used to love glass. There was a glass blower named Doom Glass that was just one of my all-time favorites, and he's kind of vanished off the face of the earth the past few years. I actually went on Instagram and searched his hashtag recently and found like the most recent post of him with somebody in it and reached out to them. I was like, hey, is this dude all right? And they're like, yeah, he's just taking a break. But yeah, I loved BHO and live rosin, and I love uh, just all of it. I don't dabble as much anymore. I've got my little Puffco proxy pipe that I love, and that's my go-to as far as dabbing now. Um, But yeah, and the mountain trap, that was like my favorite strain for years and years. And I love that one. And I try to be as respectful as possible with breeding. So I reached out to Oni. We did some trades and was like, man, I'd love to work this trap cut. And it was like during the time that him and Joey were like had their little kind of falling out. Harry Palms went his way, Oni went his way. Oni said, "Yeah, I'll get it to you." Harry said, "Yeah, I'll get it to you." I met up with somebody that was like a mutual friend of theirs to get it. They gave me the wrong cut. Um, so then after I ran that, it was the wrong thing. I reached back out to both of them, and at this point, they were like had nothing to do with each other. And I told both of them out of respect that I reached out to both of them, hoping to get it from one of them to work with. And like, I think that pissed off both of them. So I kind of shot myself in the foot there, being like too respectful or cautious or wanting to do the right thing, and it kind of like pushed them both away. But I've ran into Harry Palm since then and been like, man, like I'd love to work something still. I know for a while they both kind of went their separate ways from the trap, and now it seems like they're kind of starting to come back around to the trap. But yeah, that was one of my favorite strains for a long, long time, and I really kind of got bummed out that I didn't work with it. It's still something I'd love to do. Um, I know I believe there's some other trap autos out there that I haven't tried just because I kind of stick to my own stuff just for whatever reason. But yeah, I'd love to work with that one still. And it's funny that you bring that up because I still to this day would love to work with that. I actually had some trap cherry just the other night. I went down to New York and met up with some people and had some trap cherry there. And I was like, man, I forgot how much I love this fucking Tropicana cookies. I need to get this back in my life.
That's it. That's it. This is why I'm the best, people. I got that sixth sense. I didn't even know the backstory. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. um,
No, you are. Honestly, I'm like I said, I've been a fan of yours on the podcast since the very first episode. And you've been my best friend in the garden many lonely nights. So I appreciate what you do.
oh, thank you. I was just having a joke there, but that's very lovely to hear that. And you know what? When you were talking earlier about trimming the weed when the cop broke down your door, I was gonna say I hope you weren't listening to me. I don't want to be associated with trauma.
Yeah, no, that I don't have you associated. I was listening to a show called Ron and Fez at the time. Actually, I remember specifically what I was listening to. So yeah, you're in the clear.
See what I mean? I knew you would have remembered. There you go. There you go. Okay. Well, no. Look, we've had a friendship for a number of years, and it's been awesome, and I'm so glad we're finally doing this. I guess while we're talking about, you were saying there's some other trop autos out there. I feel like a lot of the bulk sort of cheaper, largely speaking, just as a general rule of thumb, what you might call sort of European originated auto seed, probably mostly from Spain. A lot of it is obviously nowhere near the level of Night Owl, of Mephisto, and I guess a lot of those former negative, a lot of those things you hear about autos that were related to the European stock. Do you think that's just an artifact of the fact that like some of those initial breedings were not done that well and it's just carried over ever since? Like, is that just a rational explanation, or do you think like it's more complex than that?
I think the game's changed now. I think those bulk breeders have seen what the good autos are and now buy those seeds and knock those off so that they do have bulk stuff that's like much better than it used to be. But at the end of the day, any bulk anything is never going to be good as something boutique and that's actually has some intention behind it as far as the selections are going. Like that's kind of the problem with I have someone reach out to me every other month saying, "Hey, got a million seeds. Would you want to, buy some of these? We'd front them to you. You want to sell them? Put your name on it, whatever." And it's just like, never. No. Why would I ever? There's so much. It's such a personal thing. It's such a personal relationship with this plant, and the selection, like I said earlier, is so much defined by the palate of a person. So to see these, excuse me, these huge auto farms, these outdoor farms where they're reversing 1,000 plants and pollinating 5,000 plants and getting however many millions of seeds, and then combining them all into one seed stock is just crazy to me. Like I get it. There's always going to be a market for that, and these people spend their money on promotion rather than actually doing the breeding stuff. And it's always going to be a thing. There's always going to be a new company coming in. There's always going to be people doing white labeling stuff. It's part of the industry at this point, and it is what it is. It's a difference between again the intentional pollination and selection and having a discriminating palette versus we're just trying to make as many seeds as possible for as cheap as possible to sell them for as much as possible. So I don't know. My buddy was down in a hydro shop in DC. Sent me a picture the other day. He's like, for every for every $100 you spend, you get to stick your hand in a box and grab a random pack of seeds or three random packs of seeds. It was, and the seeds he pulled out were auto companies that you and I both know very well, and it was just amazing to me to see what kind of level it. I was talking to Sin City about this earlier tonight. Actually, it's a race to the bottom with autos these days because the sharks have seen what good auto flowers do, and the the autoflower community has been like the bastard stepchild of the cannabis scene its entire existence. They've never been given like any respect or any credit or anything. It's always like you mentioned earlier, oh, they're for beginners and only, beginners grow these. And it's even to the point where they're like the hate for it is so strong that it's kind of alienated us into our own little community that's almost separate from the cannabis community. It's like the autoflower community and the cannabis community. So people see that and they want in on it, and yeah, it's just it's they're like, well, let's take the best seeds that we can buy and reproduce them in mass without a care for anything other than just the quantity of the seeds at the end of the day. Let's get some cool packaging to put them in. Let's name them something catchy, and let's just sell them for as cheap as possible. If you see the some of these companies and the amount of seeds they give out, you buy a pack of seeds for $40 and end up getting 15, 20 seeds for that. You can just tell that's a white label company. That's all bulk stuff. You know what I mean? There's no way you can't afford the overhead of an actual true like breeding situation with autos. They just don't yield the same amount of seeds that a photo period does. If you're doing selections, you're not pollinating every single thing. Or if you are pollinating every single thing, you're testing the plants afterward. You're smoking the seeded bud to figure out what's the best, and you're releasing the best. At least that's how I do it. So a lot of these companies just release everything. They put it all into one. Like I said, there's so much phenotypic variation in some strains and in some generations in particular. If you just combine them all together and call it one thing, it's impossible to recreate or to really do that because there's you can have in a pack of five seeds, five different phenotypes, and I don't know. It's a different way of doing things than I do. There'll always be a market for it, um, but yeah, it seems to be a race to the bottom right now in the auto flower world, and it almost reminds me of kind of like the big multi-state operators in the dispensary world coming in, selling stuff at a loss to get rid of the local competition who's actually putting in the work, has the heart and the soul and the passion, and are putting out the good product, but have to charge more for it because they just have that higher overhead and don't have this reserve of money that they're just sitting on to get rid of the rest of the competition, which that's kind of where we're at right now in the auto world is just the big bucks, the chads or whatever you want to refer to them as are here, and a lot of them are very deceptive in their marketing to make it seem like it's not what it is. But if you're able to, like I said, kind of see the marketing schemes and the way that they're doing things and just the sheer volume of seeds that they can afford to give away, it's just a completely different. That's not what I do, and I'll never be able to do that. And yeah, it hurts my soul a little bit to see, but it also makes me happy that it's bringing new people into the autoflower world because once they get hooked, then they do their research and then they find Night Owl, and it's like, wow, I wish I knew about this sooner, but I'm glad I'm here now.
Yeah, yeah, that's such an interesting perspective. I have to admit, I feel quite enlightened to hear all of that because, as you said, there is a bit of a subdivision, and it can at times feel a bit like grower versus autoflower grower. You know what I mean? And when you say all of those points, all of them resonate. I can completely appreciate all of what you said, and To be honest, I think there's honestly a bit of a race to the bottom in even in photo periods, like all power to him. But it was just a few weeks ago we saw Top Dog post about I'm getting back to a day job because things are changing. And credit to him, and there was many other breeders in the comments who shared that same sentiment. I know Skunk VA used to be working as an electrician for many years because he was like, why not? I wanted to sort of pivot for a second and ask you. I think your Instagram account has to be one of the most faked ones out there. There's a few people. I think Cap, he's another guy, but like you are definitely in the contention up there. I think I like to pride myself on never following the fake account because it gives social vouch and other people follow it, and I like to think I'm a good enough little Instagram detective that it's pretty clear. Anyway, one time I got caught out. I'll be honest, one time I got caught out. I followed the fake one. I'm sorry. But I want to know from your point of view, what's it been like to have so many people because it seems like I have to assume that these scammers are getting sales because that's why they keep doing you, right?
Flattering. Dude, I'm one person. I live with myself every day, so I don't see myself as anything particularly special. You know what I mean? I'm just a person. I'm just doing the work that I want to be doing. So to see other people that are copying and completely taking my profile and making it their own and doing tricky stuff with like, using a capital I to make it look like an L or using a period in the wrong place or whatever. Like they fooled me before. I was like, is this my account? Like I tagged the wrong account before. So, don't feel bad about that. I've done it too, but it is a tricky thing to navigate and to have someone come to you and be like, man, I just sent this dude money through PayPal, friends and family, and like don't have anything to show for it. It's like that's a tough position to be in. And I always, say, send me the screenshots. I'll take care of you. Like, sorry that happened, but it is just kind of the one of the evils of Instagram these days. And I try to post about, anytime I see one. And it's weird now with like the invite collaborator post on Instagram. I'll invite my three other accounts. I've got four accounts, and I'll invite them all so that people can see these are like the accounts. And even still within those, the scammers will comment. And for some reason, a lot of times I don't see them, whether I only have them blocked on one of the four accounts or whatever. So they fly under my radar and people will be like responding. Even recently, somebody was like, the Chemdog was commenting to somebody about like, dude, that's a fake account, and he got his first fake account after our collab together, where they were like pretending to be Chemdog Glass. And he was like, man, this is new. I've never experienced this before, so you must be doing something right. But yeah, that's tricky to deal with and tricky to navigate. But I try to steer people right and try to post fairly frequently the fakes as they pop up. And that's one of the evils of dealing with that platform.
Yeah, totally, totally. It's I feel like it's actually becoming worse more recently. But hey, you named the magic word chemdog focal theme in the show overall, and I'm sure a strain, a man, a family of strains that near and dear to both of our hearts. Tell us a little bit about this collab. I know people are excited. A few of the listeners will like definitely ask about the chemdog collab, and tell us a little bit about the chemdoggin as well.
Man, that was special to me. That dude, I have so much respect and love for him, and really, really, that was something special for me. It was a project I've been working on since 2018 or 2019, somewhere in there. I met him first in like 2015, I think. I commissioned a little oney from him, and then a hammer and some other stuff, and it was amazing. The first time I met him, James Bean introduced him to me using my real name rather than Daz. And every time I'd see him after that, he'd be like, "Hey," and say my real name. And it was like so special to me that this person, fucking Chem Dog, dude, like knows my real name enough so to remember it year after year. Like it was crazy to me. And he like, I don't know, his whole story was very touching to me. The fact that he's like a stand up dude and did the right thing. And, there's it's just I say there's a difference because we're different. That's always been kind of my catchphrase with Night Owl and what I do, and I feel like he's like that as well. I saw a lot of similarities as far as starting young and trying to be a good steward for the plant and to keep things alive and moving and knowing when we have something special and um, yeah, man, he's just a really, really good dude. And so I worked the line, made the seeds, and for years I was like, dude, we should like collab on this. I'd love to like collab on this. Let's do this. But just the timing never worked out. I'd be like, yeah, like, well, let's do it. Let's do it. Like he never shit on the idea. He was like always positive about it. Never had a bad thing to say. Always excited about it. But just the timing never worked out. And then he got a job in the legal industry, has a grow out in Massachusetts for a dispensary out there, and that really started to take up a lot of his time. So the seeds were ready well over a year ago, and finally I hit him up again. I was like, man, I'd still love to do that collab thing. And the whole time I was like, I want to do something special for it. I want it to like be a historic thing, at least in the canna world. Like this was fucking Chemdog again. Like this is the man. So in 2019, I think it was, I saw his collab with Swamp White Seeds. Actually, let's see, I have them right here in front of me. He did the Dog Ways collab with Swamp Boy Seeds, and they did vials that the seeds came in, numbered from 1 to 100. I've got number 41 out of 100 right here in front of me. And it was like, I don't even want to open them. I don't want to break the seal on these because it's such like a special, cool, sentimental pack. And so I always had the idea. I loved his oneies. They've always been like my go-to piece ever since I started smoking. Chillums and little oneies were always my go-to. Um, so I wanted to do numbered oneies for a collab drop. I was like, that would be so fucking dope to have some Night Owl oneies. And I'm not like I never knew the business side of glass. I never knew just how incredibly expensive it is to have custom millies made. And I mean, it was like mind blowing the amount of money I spent on these things. And I charged $5 more than I actually paid for them to be made, which didn't even cover the credit card processing fee for the actual pipe. It was definitely like a labor of love type thing. But man, I am so honored and so proud and so stoked that we got these oneies done with the Night Owl millies. There's two UV reactive millies in it and one regular Night Owl millie and then the Chem Dog millie. And they're just fucking gorgeous, man. Every single one that I sent out, I didn't want to. I was like, I wanted to keep all 100 for myself. Like, they're all so beautiful. And each time I see one posted, I remember packing it up and like the specific details of that individual one that really stood out to me. So anytime I see one posted, I'm like, this one was one of my favorites because of this, or this one was one of my favorites because of this feature. But yeah, it was like years and years in the making, and to have it all finally come to fruition the way that it did was just phenomenal. And again, not to speak out of school, but it was at a time in Chemdog's life where his father was sick, and rest in peace, his father did just pass away recently. But I think it also really helped kind of with some stuff that he had going on too, financially. So it was such an honor for me to be able to pay back something to this man who's given so much to the cannabis community. And I also released some Chem 91 reg autos, which nobody really releases reg autos because I feel like, oh, that's giving away intellectual property, or you're gonna spawn 100 different companies that are all making seeds from these auto regs, which it did spawn some, but so be it. I wanted that out there the way the Chem 91 made an impact on the photo period side of things. I wanted these auto regs to make that same impact in these same waves on the autoflower side of things. And I think it did exactly that. Um, so yeah, it was like a just an amazing thing, and to me, a milestone and a historic a piece of cannabis history here, and truly an honor to be able to work with this man who I've looked up to for so long in doing this thing. So, and man, nothing but love and respect to that dude. I think I think he may be getting into the. I know he's been making some seeds and testing some seeds out of his own soon. So hopefully we see some ChemDog releases soon. And I told him, any help he needs with that. He reached out to me to ask about like packaging and stickers and that sort of thing. But he told me he'd never been a part of any genetic drop like the one that we did. He was like, that was so special and so unique. And I mean, they sold out within minutes. Like it was, they're gone now. All the oneies, I we didn't even know how the oneies would sell. I was like, is this too much to charge for a pipe? If I just charge exactly or $5 more than what I paid for them, like, is that going to be too much? Because it ended up being 225 bucks for the pipes. It ended up costing me like 220 with the I did like some custom packaging, some really nice boxes for them. We did some pins, keychain, all sorts of stickers, and just extra goodies to go along with it and make it really memorable and special. And yeah, it worked out phenomenally. I thought initially maybe we'd sell like 25, even though I'd commissioned 100 total. And yeah, he made 40 the first batch, and I was like, well, that should be plenty. I don't think we're going to sell 40 of them. But yeah, they sold out almost instantly. And so he was like, well, fuck, I guess I have to go back and make the rest of them now. So it was like another week, he made another 40. And then the next week, he made the final 20. And yeah, it was like people were kind of pissed that they had to wait for it. I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Like, I knew in my heart how huge this was, but I didn't know other people would respond to it the same way that I was feeling about it. And to see that, I think it really was heartwarming to him as much as it was to me to like get out there to a completely new audience and like really keep the legend of this beautiful person alive and this beautiful strain and yeah, man, I am so stoked and honored to have done that, to have done it justice. I think I did that really truly proper.
That's so epic to hear, and I echo all those sentiments. Greg and just I think his wife as well. They do so much for the scene, and very very much unsung heroes. And that's so exciting to hear that there might be some seeds from him on the horizon, and that you were able to do this really fulfilling and cool project with him. In amongst that, you referenced dropping the photo period auto hybrids with the Chem 91. I wanted to ask about that because I mean, I guess you sort of answered it, but I'd love to get a bit more thoughts about, do you think the fact that there are so few auto companies on the market, relatively speaking, is a reflection of the fact that people are a bit guarded about releasing the regular stock as it is kind of IP? And I guess as an extrapolation of that, do you think that like it's okay to give it out because the real skill's sort of in the breeding anyway, it's not just in the base stock? Or what's your thoughts overall on it?
I think that I'm afraid to see after all the work that I've put in, the autoflower gene pool get bottlenecked from people, reversing the same shit onto the same shit over and over again, especially with all the bulk stuff going on right now and the fake name game, the renaming stuff. Um, I've released the Wizard's Apprentice as auto regs. I've released the Zamodelica Express as auto regs. I've released the Blue Microverse as auto regs. I've done um, a few more. I've done Zamodelica to Marathon auto regs, Zamodelica to Tyrone Stomper auto regs. So I've tried to put a platform out there for other people that really want to do the work and do it properly. I've tried to give them the absolute best footing possible and the foundation to move forward in the best light. So that was really kind of like an altruistic type thing of like, I want this to be carried on. And who know who knows how long any of us have on this earth, you know what I mean? And if this stuff isn't out there, if it's locked and guarded, like if I pass away, what's gonna happen to my seed stock? You know what I mean? Like it's I've got so much here. If I don't get it out and don't allow others to work with it, what good is it? So that was kind of the motivation for it. And also just people were gatekeeping autos for a long time and weren't putting out auto regs. And even still, there's like no auto regs out there. So, and honestly, there's really not a market for it. Most people that get autos want to grow them, don't want to breed them. And I think uh, they're harder to breed. They take longer. It's a very dedicated and time, space, and energy consuming process. But to put these out there for the people that actually want to do it right felt like the right move to me. And, a lot of people told me I'm shooting myself in the foot by doing that, this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, it's also palette driven. And, you know, there's, I'm super fortunate that somehow I've gained a very loyal following. And again, I'm not a person that like toots my own horn or have ever been good about talking about myself. Other people talk way better about me than I can ever talk about myself, and that's just the way it's always been. But the fact that people are loyal and do want that and want to work it their own ways is like it's an honor to me. Like it's just a weird thing where it's like I don't know. Sometimes I feel really good about what I've done, and sometimes I'm like, did I just like completely fuck up myself from a business standpoint? But at the end of the day, I can't worry about it. And there's, like I said, there's so many new projects to constantly work on that it's hard for me to even do the reproduction. So to put this stuff out there for other people to do just so it carries on one way or the other in some format is better than it not being available.
Totally, totally. Because, you know, we hear this sentiment shared in the context of clones all the time. It's like it's all well and good to sit on it, but if something happens to you, it's gone, and then it's almost better to just give it out there just for the purposes of keeping it. But then, as you said, there's also just a lot of good intention and a sense of collegiality in sharing it and saying, I'm not looking to hamstring anyone who wants to give it a go themselves. So that's really awesome. I love that answer. That's beautiful. I wanted to ask you, you spoke about how you let your work and let others speak about you more than yourself. And I think looking at the sheer number of collaborations you've had, all just, sort of really big hitter names in the mix there, is there anything fun on the horizon you might want to give people a sneak peek into? Or even just more generally, any strains on the horizon you are sort of locked into working with that you might slip out?
Um, as far as stuff that I want to share, I've pretty much said most of it. The Piff, the Banana OG, obviously the Blue Power, the AJ Sour Diesel. I'm working with Top Dog to do a Star Dog auto. I've kind of fucked that up and lost the clone. Got it back from him, lost it again. Um, got it back from him, lost it again, bought it from somebody else, lost it again. So I really have like fucked that one up royally, and I feel so much shame about that. But life happens, and I'll get it back again, and I'll make it right, and we'll do it the justice it deserves. Um, but yeah, those are pretty much the ones as of now that I want to share and keep the rest under wraps. I've found that if I give too much away, or if I'm saying I'm working on a certain strain, all of a sudden another breeder will have it on the market 6 months later, which, unless they happen to have that same mindset, we're doing the work, which these people that all of a sudden come out are the name game people that just will slap whatever name sells on something that it's like, I just keep it to myself at this point until I'm like almost ready to release it. So yeah, those are the ones that I'm comfortable kind of talking about now.
No, look, I think you mentioned just a variety of strains there, which is just a plethora to get excited about. No need to feel bad about not dropping any more. There was about 4 or 5 hitters in there. I want to ask a few of the fan submitted questions we got from the Patreon, but before I do, a few last ones from me, which was just as a sort of general question, not that I'm like, thinking of any project. Is there one project of yours that you think to yourself, you know what, I wish I could go back to that one, either because it's just so good you want to continue it, or because maybe you think you might have been able to do it better? Does anything jump to mind when I say that?
I think the Tyro and Stomper at F7 started to get a little, the bud structure became looser and isn't quite what it was before. So that is one that I would like to go back to. It still hybridizes incredible. It still crosses out beautifully. All the hybrids from it are amazing. But in its pure form, I think I lost something just in the structure alone. But also at the same time, it's frostier now than it's ever been. I mean, the main stalk has trichomes on it. Like the fan leaves, everything is just completely. It looks insane. Like it's some sort of mutation happened to where the bud structure lost its density a bit, but it gained all sorts of resin everywhere. So it's like this crazy, just little freak plant of pure resin that is amazing. And like I said, it crosses out well still, but that's one that I would like to go back and kind of lock back down on its own so that it can be released, nice and pure again. Um, I think, I mean, that's the only one that I'm kind of hard on myself about, to be to be honest.
Well, I think that one's pretty fair, to be honest. But it also sounds like it hasn't deteriorated. It's just sort of diverged a bit from the original, but it's got all those trichomes. So that's a good answer. I like that one. I like that one. As a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one, I want to know: will we ever see any photo period from you?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I did do a release of early bird fast photos to go along with Night Owl. So there's a from Seed to Stone, this YouTube channel. It's like massive. He's got a huge Discord, and he did a strawberry milk and cookies remix grow off recently. And for his Patreon members, I released for the first time ever, just gifted them out just to see them grown out. A cross called Majestic Thai, which was an old Thai clone crossed to Wizard's Apprentice, and that was like my first ever photo period cross that I had released, or photo to auto. So the whole concept was like early bird, fast finishing photo periods to go along with the night owl auto flowers. And I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of photo period crosses that I've made over the years, just photo to photo straight up, just for preservation's sake, and just for my own to dig into later and see what I can find. Um, but I do feel there's some merit to staying in my own lane. I do feel there's merit to remaining loyal to the people that have remained loyal to me. And at the end of the day, there's just not enough space and time for me to do both, at least not to the level that I want to be doing them. And so autos are my favorite thing to grow. I love how they keep me on my toes. I love how they keep me involved. I've got, if you couldn't tell from the conversation so far, some ADHD issues. So the autos and their constant changing and their speed and everything just I don't know, it keeps my interest from start to finish. So that's really where my heart, my passion is at. But I wouldn't mind releasing some of the photo period stuff that I've made just to get it out there, because again, it's stuff like with the Space Dog clone that's no longer in existence. I crossed that to the Blue Magoo BX2. I've crossed it to Space Dog seed stock, which I went through a bunch of packs of the Space Dog seed stock to find the same clone before the people that had the clone allowed me access to it. And there was nothing like this clone in the seed stock. And come to find out later, I guess there was a mix up with some cool at one point in his mails where the space dude wasn't the space dude anymore, and so the seeds that I had weren't the same seed stock from previous, even though they were labeled and sold as such. And so there's stuff like that, that even the Grape Stomper OG, some Aloha White Widow stuff that I like across the Blue Magoo and the Space Dog seed stock and a bunch of stuff. And yeah, I'd love to get it out there. At this point, a lot of it's older, maybe 8 to 10 years old. Um, but I've made more recent photo crosses too. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Nowadays, you see more and more photo people coming into the auto world, and it's like, all right, well, if there is this crossover, maybe I will. And I do try to, like, people that I look up to and respect and like, I try to give them the proper guidance to do it right, as far as stepping in. And like, I was talking to Sin City earlier. I was like, dude, you've got an amazing foundation now to like use this Blue Power Auto against all your other stuff and do your own auto flower line. He was like, man, I was thinking the same thing, but kind of he has that same mentality of not wanting to step on any toes. And he's like, I was going to ask you about that and ask for your guidance with some of this. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to help in any way I can, because I'm never going to have the time and space to do all that anyway. And this stuff is phenomenal and should be made into autoflower format. So I'd love to help with that sort of thing. But as far as doing it, who knows? Maybe one day.
You should do it. I'd encourage you to. But it's interesting because you sort of alluded to this point that I like, which is that there is sort of this interesting stigma of anyone who photo breeds, they'll make an auto, no one bats an eye. But to do it the other way, it's a little bit more of a gap to jump, isn't it? So that is interesting. Now, the final question from me before we jump into some of the Patreon ones, it's a doozy, but it's the one I wanted to know probably the most. Explain to me, how do I convert my favorite photo period clone into an auto?
Sure. Excuse me. So you take your photo period clone and you get some auto regs, or if you're proficient in reversing, find a auto female that you like. either way, reverse the photo onto the auto or the auto onto the photo. Or again, excuse me. Again, for the sour stomper, I used a photo period male onto a female feminized autoflower. So you can do it either way. It doesn't matter. It's all in the selection once again. But you get that F1 generation of photo to auto. They are all going to be 100% of the time photo period. You take those, you find the male and the female that have the traits of the photo period. You cross those together. Then you get the F2 generation. Here's where you need to run the big numbers. So 25%, give or take, of that F2 generation will be autos. And then obviously, if it's a regular seed stock, half are going to be male and half are going to be female. So you run enough that you'll have a good selection of that 25% of autos to pick out an auto male with the photo period traits that you're looking for and an auto female with the photo period traits that you're looking for. And you cross those two autos for fully auto F3. And then from there, it's a matter of whether you want to refine the line more, whether you want to feminize at that point, whatever you want to do. The other way, and I've just started to dabble in this way of doing it, is trying to work the entire project feminized so that it's that much easier, so that you don't have to do, a multiple male selection at any given stage, at any generation, where you don't necessarily know what the male is going to provide. Doing it all a feminized stock, and potentially, I haven't done this yet, but this is my next trial and error thing to do, is making F1 feminized photo to autos, growing those out, picking the single best female out of those that resembles that clone only, selfing that one for the F2 generation to try to lock in those photo traits. And then in the F2 generation, picking out the one or two best female autos and selfing or cross pollinating those and just doing the whole project feminized, so that way it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Now, again, I haven't done this yet, but I have set myself up to do this now with some new feminized photo to auto crosses that I'm looking forward to trying.
That's brilliant and very comprehensive. I was sort of in my mind following each step, and it sounds like, as you said, a lot more involved than regular breeding, but very doable. Just probably takes a lot of time, patience, and skill. I guess my question then is, on that last step, right, where say you've got the F3, and most of the time people release feminized autoflower seeds. So I'm guessing you pop those seeds and you pick one of the females and you reverse it onto the others, and that's the stock. Is there any way of which you can improve your select? Because I'm assuming in an ideal world you're going to reverse one of the better females, but you don't. It's not like a photo period where you get to know which ones are the better ones. So is it just like the good female would be the pollen donor if it's not the pollen provider or a pollen recipient, or is there any difference in that situation? Have you found?
And this is where photo period breeders have it so easy because they can keep clones. And I don't want to, like, again, I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but if I was to enter the photo period world, I do think I could run circles around some of the current breeders that are out there. Um, and again, you might want to cut that out. I'm an asshole for even thinking that. But anyway, yeah, no, I always reverse way more plants than I need. I always pollinate way more plants than I need. And then it really comes down to, after those are harvested, smoking each one and figuring out which seed stock from those to actually work with moving forward. So, like I was saying, some of the bulk guys will just mix them all together and call it one individual strain. You know what I mean? Whereas I will only take one of those plants and move forward with that seed stock to the next generation. And you don't know until you actually smoke it, because the effects actually matter. It's not just, well, this one's really pretty, so we're moving forward with this one. There's it's way deeper than that. So I always do way more. I'm always tossing out way more plants and seeds, and I've got, yeah, seed stock that'll never be released for that exact reason. Is it just, I made it thinking it was going to be one thing, but it didn't live up to my expectations, so it's a non-starter at this point. But yeah, the photo period guys definitely have a nice benefit of being able to keep clones and going back and then, yeah, working back to the same stock over and over again.
Yeah, certainly I can appreciate how that would be more challenging. Definitely, definitely. my final question there. Does that mean that you have to smoke like seeded flower? Because I always found like it's more difficult for me to sort of guess the winner. But I guess it's this fine balance of making seed and having some flower to smoke. It's always challenging. How do you combat that one?
That's it. Yeah, you just smoke the flower. I've recently got one of those. I think they're called the pollinator over in like the EU and other places, like the tumbler where you can sift the heads of the trichomes off without, destroying. Obviously, I can't blast seeded flower or whatever, so I smoke it. I pick the seeds out and try to leave, the actual flower intact as best as possible without having to smoke seeds. But yeah, I'll do the keef as well. I'll smoke that, but that's it. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but that's the only way to do it. Like, there's no well, I'm going to smoke this other plant that's not pollinated and assume it's the same as the seeded one. You know what I mean? Like it's just I smoke seeded flower, and that's kind of all there is to
Thank you for falling on your sword for all of our benefit.
it.
It's just such a funny idea, like smoking seeded flower. No one likes to do it, but it's like in this case, it's truly for the greater good. Okay, so I mean, the first of the Patreon questions, we got some really good ones. The first one from one of our supporters is they wanted to know: have you ever felt like or found what you felt was sort of a unique terpene that was sort of brought or associated with the ruderalis gene at all, or do you think there aren't necessarily unique profiles associated with it?
So I mentioned earlier that my older brother and some of his friends would say, this tastes like an auto flower. It tastes like an auto flower. I've never had anyone be able to describe what that tastes like to me, and I've never associated any individual flavor with an auto flower. A lot of people even think and have thought for a long time that all autos taste the same, and it just couldn't be further from the truth, man. There's like so many flavors out there now that, yeah, it's just it's not a real thing. Um, I've never actually had any pure ruderalis. Um, So I can't say whether I've like tasted a ruderalis terp before. Um, I've gotten in online discussions with Todd McCormick, who's like adamantly against autoflowers and saying they suck and they taste like shit and they don't get you high. And I just tried to, as diplomatically as possible, explain to him that that's not the case anymore and tell him, look, I've got stuff. I guarantee you, I have flavors that you've never had before. And like I've sent them seeds before, and I'm sure they just went straight in the garbage. But people like that, like my greatest compliment is photo period purists that are like, "Damn, this is an auto flower." That's the tops for me. Like when I can change somebody's mind through the work that I've excuse me through the work that I've done. That's like that's the ultimate compliment for me. But as far as an actual auto flower terp, I can't say that I've ever had it. Speaking of ruderalis, this is the 100-year anniversary of the discovery of ruderalis. One of the people that grows my gear is actually related to the person that found it as an ancestor of the person that classified it. And he reached out to me. I was like, dude, this is like, I just wanted to let you know, it's like 100 years since this happened. I was like, oh my God, that was like amazing. So part of me wanted to reproduce like a lot of my old stuff and try to put out 100 different varieties of through the years of my catalog as like the 100-year anniversary thing. But I realized that was way too far fetched with all the projects I had going on and just would have been an insane thing to try to take on. But yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. And I really want to do an autoflower documentary and go out and like interview, Joint Doctor and all Dutch Passion and Mephisto and all the people that have like helped to create this thing and make it to where it is today. And that's kind of uh, I haven't taken like a break from doing this in a decade. Like you get in the garden and you're on the garden schedule, and that's just kind of what it is. So part of me really wants to take a break and dedicate some time and energy into doing that because I think it would open a lot of people's eyes to kind of see how far they've come and see how much work has actually been put into them. But that's a pipe dream for now. Who knows? I hope someone smarter and more well equipped than I takes the lead on that and does it. And I'd be more than happy to help out and kind of give guidance as far as, from my perspective, who are the right people to talk to and who have been doing it right. But I think something like that would be really, really cool to see.
I love the idea of the documentary. I mean, everything you said was great, but that you're right. That sort of documentary, you can really see that coming to life and being quite a compelling story overall because, there's really not that many players in it, right? You can really trace it quite easily.
And
Um,
they're all still alive right now, and it's become such a like big thing where it's not just for the longest time it was just autoflowers or European junk, and now they're worldwide. And I mean, some people say they're worldwide junk, but they're really just. I mean, they're awesome. They're out there. They're amazing. They've come so far. Like the sheer amount of progress and evolution of these plants in the past decade is unlike anything else that I've ever seen. So I don't know. I think there's potential to do something really really cool and really special with that. And maybe now that I put it out there, who knows? Maybe it'll come to fruition. Maybe I can actually take some time off and figure out how to do it.
That would be cool. That would be really, really cool. The next question we got from one of our listeners was they wanted to know if you'd ever considered doing like some landrace style work using some of the landrace autoflowers out there. And they just said, oh, like, I don't know, like Siberian by Thai or Siberian by Afghan or whatever it is. Would you ever consider doing that sort of landrace work, or do you consider that like those core building blocks are really necessary to make a high quality auto and you know what I mean? It takes so long to go from scratch.
No, I think that's really intriguing, and I know. I think there's a gentleman. I think his name's like Guardian of the Terps or something like that. That has a Siberian landrace autoflower, and I think that would be really cool to see. And I think, I mean, there's just the land races is where it all began, and I think there's um, a real there should be a real concerted effort made to preserve those and to continue to keep those pure and work with them. And I'd love to be a part of it, but I see myself doing it from modern autoflower stock as opposed to actually going back to a ruderalis stock because I feel like I'd be able to extract the best possible outcome using stuff that I know and can breed away from my autoflower traits and select for the landrace traits, but keep the autoflower characteristic of actually flowering under 24 hours of light. And man, I love the landrace stuff. Man. I like that Zamodelica Express is my favorite, one of my favorite strains, if not my favorite strain of all time. Like I, I think I improved on the actual Zamodelica photo period for my taste. I like the autoflower version more than I like the photo period at this point, and that's one that I'm going to work back again. I recently got some um, Zamodelica. It was called like the scary pheno, the super trippy pheno, some F3 Zamodelica seeds from my buddy on Instagram. So I'm planning on popping some of those and crossing the Zamodelica Express back to that and working that out. Same for the Destroyer. I feel like that's a strain that should be put in the autoflower format. I'm really looking forward to. I got some seeds of that just aren't around anymore. So I'm looking forward to doing that one. I'd love to also go back and do some of the Pakistani stuff and the Afghan stuff and really like, you know, lock those in. But there's so many projects and so few of me and so few hours in the day and I can only do so much and I hope to give a provide the proper show the way to do it right. You know what I mean? Like don't half ass it. Just do it right, do the proper selections and be in it for creating something new that you want to see in the world that's better than what it was before. I feel like the other day I was like, what businesses, what things have gotten better over the past few years? I feel like almost everything surrounding us has like been in decline these past few years. And what I feel like Amazon is the only thing that's actually gotten better with time. Is like, all right, well, I can get anything I want shipped to me in 2 days now. But other than that, I feel like everything else has kind of gotten worse. And prices continue to go up and inflation keeps happening. And it's to the point where honestly, I do think I'm going to have to raise my prices next year just to continue to stay afloat with everything else. Because when I started selling seeds in 2015 or whatever, $50 then is now $68 in today's market, and I'm not charging more per pack. I'm still charging the same. and everything else has gotten way more expensive. So it's like it is kind of hard to keep doing it the way I've been doing it and stay afloat sometimes. But at the end of the day, I'd be doing it again whether the money was involved or not, and I'm going to continue doing it. And I think that resonates with people, and that shows in their growth of my stuff. And so it is what it is. Whether I can make a living doing just this, or whether I'm going to have to swing a hammer or figure out how to do electrical work like JJ, man. Nothing but respect and love to that dude for even posting that. You know what I mean? That was like a really fucking badass thing for him to do. And I was like, yeah, this is where we're at right now. And again, it goes back to the bulk seed companies coming in, and just it's a different beast than it was 10 years ago. So it's trying at times. Um, I know, I have a lot of followers on Instagram, so people think I'm some huge company, but it's just me, and it's a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of risks taken, and that's just, I mean, it's the plant is special, and it reverberates with me, and I reverberate with it, and we have this love and understanding for each other. That's something I've only ever come close to finding in a dog. You know what I mean? Like just like weird loyalty to each other, where we just find each other in the dark. So yeah, it's I'm sorry, I went on a tangent there. I don't even know what the initial question was anymore. But yeah, I love this, and I'm stoked to be able to do it. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
Totally, totally. I was about to say that's beautiful. I think I agree. I 100% agree with every sentiment. And again, big love to JJ for putting that post out there. As you said, it's a bit of the sign of the times, but it's also a sign of, his character and strength. And as I said, I myself have always advocated that people have a day job. And my reason for that, beyond anything else, is that I think it allows you a bit of extra freedom to explore the weird stuff in cannabis that maybe doesn't yield as well or whatever. But it's getting to that point now where, as you said, it's just the times are changing. But look, let's end the Patreon questions with a positive one, one that several people asked in one form or another. What would be your advice for someone who wants to start breeding autos? And I guess the question would be, the obvious answer is get yourself a pack of autos. But I mean, do you think that you need to have a photo period you want to work with first? Do you think get a bunch of exposure to different autos first and then figure out what you want to do? What would just be some general advice for someone who wants to get into the world of autos and maybe breeding them?
Whatever way you want to do it. There's a million ways to skin a cat. I started out with photo to auto, and kind of that was my path for it. Was like, this is what I wanted to see. Something new brought into the world that's never existed before is an amazing feeling. It's an amazing feat, especially when it's like when you have high standards for it, and when I'm hypercritical of myself. So I'm always trying to outdo myself, push the limits as much as I can, and make things better. I've done tons and tons of auto to auto crosses. I've done tons of photo to auto crosses. There's no wrong way to get into it. Whatever you're passionate about doing, do that. Whatever speaks to you. I do think a lot of people get the idea in their head that they're going to do a photo to auto, and once they get to the F2 generation, realize, well, maybe I don't have the room to properly do this, to where I'm not going to be able to pull out from this 25% that show auto the actual things that I was looking for, and they get discouraged. But don't, man. There's just keep going, keep pushing forward. Find a male you like in that first run, save the pollen from that, do the next run, use that pollen on the female you like. Like there's multiple ways to do it and move it forward and do it properly. Um, but also at this point in time, there's enough photo or enough auto periods, enough auto flowers out there that you can do auto to auto and create something completely new. Um, but yeah, really get a pack of autos, just like you said. But now there's a ton of ways to do it. Whatever speaks to you is the way you should do it.
I love that. It's a
It is good to know the seed stock you're working from. I always would recommend, sink your teeth into the genetics on one side or the other, whether it's the auto or the photo, so that way you know which traits to select for or against. But other than that, yeah, man, it's really just whatever speaks to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that answer. Just get passionate and get into it, and the path will reveal itself. That's awesome. So I think it's about time we did our quick fire final five. So the first one, what's the best or most memorable experience with cannabis you've ever had?
Hmm. Well, honestly, I look back. I was at a point in my life at the time where going to Spain and sleeping on the floor outside of grow tents and just busting my ass in Spain was one of the best times of my life. I love that. I really felt like a kinship and a brotherhood with the guys at the time in Mephisto, and like we really clicked and we're firing on all cylinders, and we're really making a dent in the progress and the evolution of this plant. And I really do look back super fondly on that. That was like some of my favorite times, and it's one of the reasons I really like always will hold those guys in high regards, is because like that was super special to me. I really truly cherish that time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that answer. I love that. So, on the other end of the spectrum, what was one strain that all your friends had hyped up, you were really excited to try, and then when you did, you were a little let down?
Hmm. Let me think on that one. What have I been disappointed by? I really, I honestly can't think of one. I like weed a lot. I really do. I think I one time got a roadkill skunk from somebody that, now looking back in retrospect, I couldn't even, I couldn't take more than two hits of the joint because it was so fucking gross. But I think now, knowing that person's history and seeing how they were an insane sociopath liar. I think they sprayed some skunk spray on that, like some actual skunk spray stuff, and I smoked some really bad shit. And I think that was the one of the worst experiences with cannabis I ever had. Um, but speaking of, I did recently, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier when we were chatting. I did get gifted a roadkill skunk cut that somebody reached out to me through email three or four times, and I just kind of ignored it. It was another skunk tale, as I like to call it, where it had this long sordid history and lots of negativity around it. And anyway, they went on to reach out on Reddit and a few other places, and I finally responded to him. And he was like, "Yeah, man, I've been trying to give this to like CSI and Archive and Top Dog and all these people, and nobody will respond to me. And like, I see what you're doing. I've grown your plants; they're amazing. And like, I know you're an auto guy, but would you be interested in taking this?" I was like, "Fuck it, I got a pretty serious quarantine going at the moment, so I wasn't really at risk of anything. I didn't have any like projects going that could be put at risk if for some reason I did take in a dirty clone. So I took it in, and the gentleman went on IC Mag and started talking about it and posted pictures of it. And the internet is full of sleuths and detectives, and people found that the pictures he was posting were from somebody else's grow. They weren't the actual plant. And then he had like a whole bunch of stories to try to cover up for that. And then he like thought that I was somehow trying to take advantage of something or lying because somebody else reached out to me with some skunks and said they wanted me to work their skunks into auto. And just for the sake of just so nothing got lost in translation, I made a post saying, somebody else has these three skunks they're going to send me. I want to make this post here just for posterity's sake that I do have your skunk. And if I do get these other three skunks, I'll have those as well. He sent me three cuttings. So he was like, oh, he's trying to say that this isn't my skunk, that he's getting these three skunks from somebody else. And anyway, this thread just went like haywire, and he eventually got banned from IC Mag and just because of this one thread. He's talking shit about all this, and so I've just been letting it veg. I just haven't really done anything with it because I didn't know how to feel about it. And man, the I was just with it a few minutes ago. It's still in veg, but holy shit, if it doesn't smell like true roadkill skunk, I don't know what does. I sent out a T-shirt recently that got picked up by the postal inspector. Nothing else, just a T-shirt that was in the room with that plant, and that's how strong the smell is. Was that a shirt got picked up in the mail because of this plant? So I'm super stoked to work with this. Again, it's got a really kind of interesting history, and I don't know what it really is. If it really is, I think he says it's a 1988 roadkill skunk that his dad, who passed away, had, and it's like this family heirloom thing. It came from the right part of the country, um, but who actually knows what it is? But holy shit, man, does that thing smell like true roadkill skunk? So I'm finally at the point where I'm like comfortable enough to put it into flower and like see what it's about, and yeah, go from there. And it's funny because he ended up losing the cut, so I sent it back to him, and he lost it again. I sent it back to him again. And like I said, it's just been in veg for like 6 months at this point. And yeah, so now he was like, "Man, thank you so much. This is like my family heritage here. Like the fact that you got this back to me. My dad was probably rolling over in his grave when I lost this. So thank you so much." And it felt nice to be able to do that too. But yeah, I'm super stoked on this, and I wish I had my Roadkill Scum shirt that you got on. I bought one of those from Duke too, and lost it somewhere in my travels across the country. But yeah, this is the first thing that I've had that is like might be for real, the real deal roadkill skunk. And I'm hesitant to even say that because you know as well as anybody how saying that can even get you looked at sideways. So I've kept it under wraps. I think I've posted about it maybe once on Instagram, but yeah, that's something that, man, it blew me away the past few weeks. Just the smell of it is just absolutely out of this world. He asked me if I would self it and like release the photo period seeds of it, so it's like out there still. He was like, "This is your clone, like to do whatever you want with. You can give it out." But after the post on IC Mag, like I signed up just to like comment on this dude's thread and be like, "Yeah, he did send it to me." Immediately started having people reach out. Actually, somebody on Instagram reached out and was like, "Are you the Daz that got this roadkill skunk from this dude down south or whatever?" He was like, "Yeah, he's over like talking on the thread about it right now." So I went over and checked it out, chimed in on there, and that's where things got sideways with the three skunks. And so yeah, anyway, I'm super stoked to finally get that into flower and see if the smell continues through flower and then into the cured product. Because man, this is like it might be that missing link that everybody has been after for so long.
We'll all have to wait and see how it pans out. That would be really exciting if it did. And hey, if it's the real deal, S1s, what a way to make a splash into the photo world, I reckon. So on to the next question is our desert island question. I'm going to drop you off on a desert island. You can take 3 clones or 3 packs of seeds. What are you going to take with you to grow for the rest of time?
Well, I made a strain called Desert Isle. That was like one of my favorite indicas across one of my favorite sativas that was made with the intention of like, if I ever needed to, I could F2 this and then go from there and pick out like all the different stuff from both sides that I wanted to. So that would probably be one of them. That's got the Zamodelica Express in it. So that's one. I mean, Zamodelica Express would be one if it wasn't for that strain and knowing that I would have the ability to dig in and like refine some stuff from that. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna say the Desert Isle strain. The probably Cosmic Queen would be another one, just because that one is so special and sentimental to me. And hmm, let's see, that's a really tough one. For I've got what I call owl pellets, which every seed harvest I've ever made, I throw some of into a jar and I sell those as a mystery mix. I might just grab a handful of those and then toss those in just for shits and giggles, and find what I find when I find it.
I love that. That's cool. You got the time. Let's have fun with it. That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
the next question is, if you had to restart the company with just 1 pack of your current seeds, which pack would you pick?
Dude, this is my biggest fear. I think about this almost on a weekly basis of like what would happen. I there's been times in my life, especially moving across country, where I split up my seed stock into half, and I'll send half and drive with the other half just in case like something happens or doesn't make it, and then see each other at the finish line, sort of thing. But if I was to start over with just one seed pack, wow. Zamodelic Express tends to be dominant in crosses, so I don't feel like that would be one that would I don't think that would be the one. Oh man, this is a really, really tough question. It'd have to be a pack of auto regs just for the sake of it. Probably Wizard's Apprentice or Blue Microverse, one of those two, I'd say. Yeah, both of those I'm super confident in. I'm extremely happy with the results of them. I know how they breed. I know what I can pull out of them. I know which way to turn at any given generation with them. So I feel like one of those would be it. Probably the Wizard's Apprentice because it's bigger overall. It's got a little bit hardier structure to it. Yeah, let's go with Wizard's Apprentice.
A great pick, a great pick. Now, final question. I've got a time machine for you. You can go anywhere, anytime, any place. What are you going to get?
I'd go with Bodie on some of his trips around the world and see what he's seen. You know what I mean? Like that dude's lived a life, and I'd love to be along for the ride. And I know you asked him that same question, so wherever he was going, I'd be right there with him.
That's it. That's it. I can't remember. I think he said he'd go to the Ewok village and smoke with them, which, again, let's do it. Um,
I'm down.
so I think that just about brings us to the end of it. Any comments, thoughts, shout outs?
No, man, I love what you're doing. Again, I've been a fan for a long, long time. I've never seen myself in the same echelon as the people you have on the show. So I hope I did it justice here for you. It's truly an honor. I do have a request. I don't know if it's possible if you could throw the old theme song at the beginning of this one, that birds chirping and just the it's so serene and tranquil, and man, I just absolutely love that. I don't know if that's even possible, but yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It's truly been an honor and a treat. I'm a big fan of yours, and heavy days. You're the man. Keep doing what you're doing, bro.
Oh, you're far too kind. And because you asked so nicely, just for you, this one, we'll do the old theme song. But as usual, massive thank you. One of the biggest names in the auto breeding world, head of Night Owl Seeds, some of the highest quality auto flower stock you'll find. A massive, massive thank you to Daz for taking the time to come on the show today.
My pleasure, man. Huge honor. Thank you for everything you do and for getting the information out there. You're gathering stories and information that wouldn't be out there without you. So what you're doing is truly special and unique, and I really do appreciate it.
And there you have it, my friends. What did you think? A massive shout out to Daz for taking the time to come join us, chat about autos, history, predictions for the future, and so much more. If you love this episode, please consider supporting both the Patreon as well as the websites of our incredible sponsors. If you're looking to transition from combustion to vaping, check out our good friends at Dynavap. You will not be disappointed. Cheap, affordable, and incredibly efficient units. Likewise, check out our friends at Pulse Sensors. If you want to make sure that your garden is dialed in and you are tracking all of the variables that are going to ensure your next harvest is the best to date, you've got to get yourself a Pulse, guys. It's a no-brainer. In order to ensure that your garden is pest and pathogen free, please check out our friends at Copet. They are the #1 in biopredatory technology. Of Spidex Vital, we'll make sure that your garden is spider mite free. Copet, thank you so much for your support. Likewise, a big shout out to our friends at Organics Alive for all the most incredible powdered organic products usable in all systems, both organic and hybrid. People winning cups around the globe with their products. It's no surprise because the quality is second to none. A huge thank you to Organics Alive. We recommend them highly. Please check them out if you want to take your organic game to the next level. Finally, massive shout out to our good friends at Seeds Here Now. They got Heavy Days beans. Go check them out, guys. I promise you will not be disappointed. They've got all the latest drops, the hottest breeders, Fem, Auto, Photo Period, CBD, whatever you need, they're here to help you out. A massive thank you to our friends at Seeds Here Now. And big love to the Patreon gang. We love you so much. Thank you for supporting the show. They got early access to this episode over a month ago. If you want to get extra content, please consider supporting the show. You'll score yourself genetics, a whole bunch of swag from our sponsors, and so much more. So that just about brings us to the end of it for this one. A big thank you to you for getting to the end yet again, and for the support. Big love as always from your boy Heavy Days. Signing off. See you.